Theraphish, not sushiologist. If I could get a degree in that, I would. But I don't have a degree in that. We're getting a degree in therapy. Sushiology. What? A thing to study. Okay, so this didn't work. What the hell? I made a whole going live thingy and it didn't work. Frick. Whatever. Well, sorry, YouTube. I don't know how to make this work. I'll fix it. Nyaho, everybody, welcome in to the stream. I'm fixing YouTube. I guess I shouldn't have done that. But whatever's. You know what it is, what it isn't. How do I delete this? How do I delete this? Ooh. Delete. I understand. The Emperor of Fish Kind. Is he my emperor? Is he your emperor? Is he our emperor? We're gonna find out. I want to get to know this guy. Big E. Let's get to know him. Let's get to know him. Nyaho. Okay. I made a going live thingy, but when I went live, it didn't put me there. I think I should ask you how that works. I don't know. Anyways. Nyaho, everybody! Nyaho, heck! You get the first guess! Hello? Where am I? Why am I down here? Hi, Hecka. First kiss is something that you can claim on Twitch. Whoa. Nyaho Verdope, Nyaho Satabi, Nyaho Hell's Angel. I know Hell's Angel was one of the early ones on YouTube. I saw them there. I saw them. Nyaho Satabi, Kero Kero Notsu, Nyaho Cow. Okay guys, we're doing it. We're getting into the nitty-gritty, the lore of the Emperor. I have a lot of questions about the Emperor, as you might have known. Who is he? What is he? Where did he come from? According to the comments, I might not get all the answers I want, but that's okay. We're gonna learn more about him. We're gonna get to know him better. You know, we're gonna vibe with him. Also, I totally freaking forgot, or I guess I didn't know. I thought all of the comments on the YouTube video would stay because last time we had a lot of people giving us suggestions on things to watch. So some of these were suggested by some people. If they were in the comments on the YouTube video and not in the comments of the live, though, I did save them. So I know some people mentioned specifically the videos we're going to watch today. So that's great. I also want to say thank you to Iron Duke for organizing these 3 videos and like putting them in order and was like, this will give a good overview. Some of them were already on my radar, but I think one of them I didn't even have. I don't think anyone else suggested it to me. So I appreciate that. We're going to watch 3 different videos from 3 different creators on one Emperor. And yeah, we're going to see how that goes. Are you excited? I'm excited. Hi, nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. Okay. Let us get into it. I will try and put timestamps after the video. I don't think I did on the last one, but I'm going to do it on this one since there's going to be 3 different videos. And yeah. A disclaimer again, this is my reaction. I am a different person from other people. I will react in different ways based on my experience and my personality. If it's not for you, I understand. Thank you for coming around. See you next time, maybe. Also, I do have a genuine interest in this, okay? I want to paint some guys. I want to make cute little minis. So, yeah, let's learn more about the intro, okay? Also, thanks to everybody we reached YouTube partner. Yay! Yeah, YouTube partner. Memberships are open. Supers are open. Also, the throne is open. I put my orcs on the throne if anyone wants to contribute to the orc faction. The throne is linked in the bio. Okay, let us begin reacting. Oh, too small. I need to be sizable to react. This is pretty sizable. Okay. Anya, there goes your money. Anya. First, where's the fish faction? The fish faction is in Age of Sigmar, and we're getting to that after 40k. Don't worry. Don't worry, I already have them. The first video we were watching is by Astartes Anonymous. Astartes Anonymous. Frick. I tried to watch their videos to see if they would say their names, but I also didn't want to get spoiled. So, sorry. Someone tell me how to say this. You can add stream elements to YouTube. Oh my gosh, Calio, can you remind me to do that after stream? Thank you. Okay, this video is entitled The Emperor, a Man Who Became a God. Let's freaking go.
What would you do if you could not be stopped? To know whatever you put your mind to, that it could be achieved. Now imagine what you would do if you had all the time in the world. What would this unstoppable version of you do with no time constraints? Take this thought experiment one step further. What would you be capable of if you were convinced that you were right, or indeed could not ever possibly be wrong? Before Johannes Gutenberg's printing press, before the pen was first used in ancient Egypt, before even the writing system of cuneiform was first used to etch thought into clay, there was a conspiracy. This was nothing so pedestrian as a hostile business takeover, an assassination attempt on a head of state, or even world domination. No,
arbitrary,
this was a conspiracy
boring,
to save the entire human race for all time. During this ancient age, men and women possessed of fierce psychic power walked the earth. These shamans, tragedy struck the
Wait. Stop.
A hostile business takeover, an assassination attempt on a head of state, or even world domination. No, this was a conspiracy to save the entire human race for all time. During this,
The Lost and Damned by Rick Priestley and Brian. Oh, I thought it said Rick Astley. I was like, you're telling me We're No Stranger to Love published an article called The Lost and the Damned? Or is this a book? Published something in 1990? That's Rick Astley. Sorry. Continue.
During this ancient age, men and women possessed of fierce psychic power walked the earth. These shamans were guided by the rhythms of the warp, and in turn...
Shamans walk the earth. The first people on earth were shamans? Not created by the Chaos Gods. I don't know. Shamans. This is the first I've heard of shamans.
This ancient age, men and women possessed of fierce psychic power walked the earth. These shamans were guided by the rhythms of the
but not
and in
psychers?
turn guided their respective peoples. Despite their wisdom, will, and miraculous power, the warp was becoming increasingly difficult to tap into as the years dragged on. Though the shamans could freely reincarnate upon death, their souls going into the warp and then returning to inhabit new bodies after a short time, this ability was slowly leaving them as well.
Early psychers. Oh, okay. So they reincarnate. Their soul goes into the warp and then it comes back out of the warp. And I assume it is touched by the warp. So that must not be good for them. That can't be good for the psyche.
Guided their respective peoples. Despite their wisdom, will, and miraculous power, the warp was becoming increasingly difficult to tap into as the years dragged on. Though the shamans could freely reincarnate upon death, their souls going into the warp and then returning to inhabit new bodies after a short time,
new bodies.
ability was slowly leaving them as well. After hundreds of years of debate and deliberation, the decision was made to pool their souls into one being. A luminous, titanically powerful human with the combined knowledge and power of the most potent psykers on the planet. To do this, however, they would all have to die. Only a simultaneous release of all of their souls.
They have a pet lizard. Okay. We're learning. He's human.
Would ensure their coalescence in the war.
He's a lot
as
of human.
One, they drank deep of a poisonous brew, and as one, they died.
Poisonous brew.
A year passed, and a baby boy was born on the plains of ancient Anatolia, what we would come to know as modern-day Turkey. His parents were normal humans, but gradually the knowledge and experience of all of his past lives began to return to him. On a day like any other.
Like the Avatar. He's the Avatar. Except everybody died for him. Wait, if everybody died for him, how are his parents there? Were his parents not psykers? Only the psykers died. Only the early psykers died to create the Emperor, and the non-psykers, or I guess the people who already lost their ability to reincarnate, those were his parents. Right? Right.
Come to know as modern-day Turkey. His parents were normal humans, but gradually the knowledge and experience of all of his past lives began to return to him. On a day like any other, tragedy struck the boy's small family. His father, the man that held him as a babe, had helped teach him his first words, and had been the example of what it meant to be a man, a leader, and protector, was found slain.
I want to know his first word. What do you think the Emperor's first word was? His father is killed. This is where the daddy issues start.
It was clear that it could have only been murder, but the killer was nowhere to be found.
Who
the
did
boy,
it?
Being the culmination of the most gifted psychic beings on the planet, glimpsed the echoes that the murder had left on the Immaterium, and knew who had taken his father from him. Much like how forensic scientists can deduce how a murder was committed by observing a crime scene, the boy saw what had happened. For what we do in our world casts a reflection upon the warp. The boy's uncle, the murderer of his father, would pay for his actions.
Another father figure comes in for his father, his uncle. Oh, textbook. Oh, no.
The confrontation was simple and direct, so brief that it was unclear whether there was even time for a confession. With a look and a thought, the boy became judge, jury, and executioner, performing what was quite possibly the first psychic execution in human history. The boy stopped his uncle's heart, leaving him to fall to the ground, dead. The man had taken the life of another, and must pay with his own as recompense. In that moment, the boy resolved that he would lead humanity to become more than just beasts acting on instincts.
I like how he's still just a boy, but they're showing his full emperor form, okay? Show me this little kid doing all this. Dang. Hi, Sierra. Welcome in. Show me this child. Okay, he did the first psychic execution. He stopped his heart. Like bloodbending, but for your heart. Nope, you bloodbend your heart. Never mind. Okay, cool. The first psychic execution. He's just a boy. Killed his uncle. Turkey.
Lead humanity to become more than just beasts acting on instincts. Under his rule, humans would walk the stars. The boy grew into a man and began a great conspiracy of his own. Taking all manner of faces and roles, the man nudged humanity in the direction it should go, all according to his designs. Sometimes a diplomat, sometimes a conqueror, and sometimes a wise elder. The man began hoarding knowledge, meeting other powerful beings like himself, and consolidating his interests in preparation for the next phase of his plan.
He was collecting intellectuals and powerful people, being friends, networking, if you will.
Thousands of years passed, and at the height of the 30th millennium, he struck out to take over Earth, now known as Terra.
Okay, it doesn't say how he lived for thousands of years. He was a kid, his dad died, he killed his uncle, and now 1,000 years has passed. Do psykers live for thousands of years? Isn't he still... See, he's human, but psyker reincarnate, but like hundreds of... Maybe he's living out all of the hundreds of lifespans? He's special. He's perpetual. Okay. He's him.
However, no mere man could ever hope to unite the entire human race under one banner. No, the man would need a new title to take charge of his new Imperium. He would need to be an emperor.
An emperor.
Wherever he went, his armies carved a bloody path through the land, leaving absolutely no trace of resistance.
Oh!
However, the militaries of the Terran nations were not the only...
Oh! The eyeballs! Oh! I didn't like that. There are perpetuals that live forever and are reborn when they die. Oh, they're perpetuals live forever, are reborn when they die. So he's one of those. He would take the identity of famous leaders and steer humanity into the right direction. Oh! So he would like... Ah. Got it. He could have been George Washington.
A bloody path through the land, leaving absolutely no trace of resistance.
I don't know why I did that.
The militaries of the Terran nations were not the only victims of the Emperor.
He was Alexander the Great. The Emperor? Whoa! Cool. That's why you can't find his body, right? That's why you can't find Alexander the Great's tomb. Because there was no tomb. Because he's the Emperor and he's in space. Duh. It's implied that he was also Judas. He was Judas. He was Alexander. He was just a boy. Mystery solved. And you're never gonna find him.
Emperor's unifying wrath. The aspiring dictator also employed a policy of prosecuting the complete eradication of religious faith from the face of the planet. To the Emperor, religion was simply a means to divide mankind against itself, and was a tired holdover for man's days in the dark. He would bring about an age of rationalistic enlightenment and progress. The church...
This is important. He doesn't want religion. He abolished religion. He said religion is separating the people. This is important.
And temples of all faiths were razed to the ground wherever the emperor walked, and those who would not renounce their beliefs were made martyrs and then forgotten. It was also during this time that the emperor welcomed Malkador, the sigillite, into his court, a terrifyingly powerful psyche.
This is the guy who sat on the throne for him when he went to go visit Horus. Finally, I meet him. Hello, Malkador.
His court, a terrifyingly powerful psyche in his own right, and wise beyond all measure.
Why is the Mona Lisa there?
Would come to be the emperor's closest advisor, and as
his
some
best
would come
friend.
to believe, his one truest friend. In the
besties?
twilight of the Unification Wars, as the campaign came to be known, the Emperor walked into the very last church on Terra. Disguised as a normal man, he met with the parishioner, a man named Uriah, and the two debated at length the merits and shortcomings of religion.
The last
at the close
church.
of their discussion, the Emperor revealed his true self to the priest, as seen in the last church.
Ooh.
You are the Emperor. I am, and it is time to go, Uriah. Go where? There is nowhere else for me in this godless world of yours. Of course there is. Embrace the new way and be part of something incredible.
Gently, Uriah took Revelation's hand, feeling a warmth flow through him. Pains that had plagued him for decades vanishing as he did so. The Emperor guided him out of the church.
I will miss this place. In time, I will build an imperium of such grandeur and magnificence that this will seem like a pauper's hovel.
Rain soaked them instantly. Hundreds of brutal giants stood in ordered ranks before the church. A group stepped forward with flame lances raised. Tears streamed down his face along with the rain as torrents of flame erupted from the warriors' weapons and licked over the roof and walls of the church.
How can you do this? You say you stand for reason and the advancement of understanding, but here you are, destroying a repository of knowledge. Some things are best left forgotten. I hope you have foreseen the consequences of a world bereft of religion. It is my dream, an imperium of man that exists without recourse to gods and the supernatural. A united galaxy with Terra at its heart. A united galaxy? Indeed. Now that unity has been achieved on Terra, it is time to reclaim humanity's lost empire among the stars. With you at its head, I presume? Of course. You are a madman, and you are arrogant if you believe you can subjugate the stars with warriors such as these. They are powerful, to be sure, but even they are not capable of such a thing. I will not conquer the galaxy with these men, for they are but men. These are the precursors to the warriors I am forging in my gene labs. Warriors with the strength and power and vision to bestride the battlefields of the stars and bring them to compliance. These warriors...
He's like You said no man can lead them? I'm no man, I'm leading them. You said no man can conquer the stars? I'm creating more non-men. Dang. For a guy who claims to hate religion, he has a pretty large god complex. Literally, it sounds like he's trying to convert them. Uriah. He's like, hey, Uriah, forget your god. Follow me. I'm not saying I'm a god or anything, because I don't believe in gods or anything like that. But follow me? Okay, you're going to be living it up large. You're going to be living big. Stick with me, kid. Is that not... What is it called? Emissarying?
Warriors shall be my generals, and they will lead my great crusade to the furthest corners of the galaxy.
Didn't you just tell me of the bloody slaughters perpetrated by crusaders? Doesn't that make you no better than the holy men you were telling me about?
Oh, got him.
The difference is I know I am right.
Oh, got him back.
Uriah did not survive his meeting with the Emperor.
Got him back. Oh, damn. That's a burn. That's a burn worse than burning down that church. Dang. What makes you better than them? Because I'm freaking right. Bye, Uriah. Jeez.
Preferring death to apostasy, and the ashes of the last church were scattered to the wind. With terror firmly under his thumb, the new master of mankind set into motion the second phase of his plan. With the creation of the Primarchs, beings made from his own perfect genetic material and portions of his psychic might, and the unveiling of the Legiones Astartes to replace the defective Thunder Warriors.
Portions of his psychic might, what does that mean? How tangibly, if he is created by the souls of hundreds of psychers, and he's giving his children the psychic might, does that mean he, like, gives each of the Primarch, like, 100 of those souls? My theory is that he's not against religion, he just doesn't want so many. He just wants one religion. He sure knew he was right so hard the gods didn't correct him in the end. Could they dare? Would they dare?
Galactic domination and the restoration of the human race's galactic empire. All was going according to plan. But the ruinous powers of chaos had plans.
Oh,
of their
here
own,
they are.
Taking a hold of the capsules that bore the infant Primarchs and cast them out amongst the stars, each landing on a different planet to face their own challenges and be tempted by the dark gods. This could not stand. The Emperor would not allow his sons to be taken from him, and with righteous...
He's like, I worked hard for this. He captured and trapped minor gods from the warp to stuff into them. It wasn't his psychic might, or at least that's one of the theories. Oh, he used his psychic might to shove other psychic might into them. Heard.
Just indignation, he made his counter. Like ants pouring out of a disturbed nest, humanity spread out amongst the stars. With their emperor at the fore, the Great Crusade rolled across the galaxy, uniting the lost worlds of humanity as well as the lost Primarchs. Known mostly for his ruthless nature when it came to war and conquest, these reunions with his sons, for the most part, were times where the emperor was able to show his more compassionate side.
He has compassion. Also, maybe someone else will answer this in another video, but he wants to unite humanity across the galaxy. How did humanity get there? We just skipped over it. When did they leave? Why? If you eradicate all the religions on Earth, that means there's probably still more in the other worlds. If humanity left. But I guess it's a symbol to have done that on Terra, right? Just to, like, prove there are no more on Terra, there is just us. Religion is bad, humans should follow reason. It's me, I'm reason.
As seen in Echoes of Eternity during his meeting with his son, Sanguinius.
I am the Emperor, and I am your father.
He said it! He said it! Sanguinius. No, I am your father.
I see the light of many souls in your eyes. I've seen shades of this meeting many times, in my dreams.
You are uneasy. That is natural, my son. I have come
son.
not only to liberate you from exile, but to ease your
Look
heart
at
and
my
mind
son.
with all you need to know. Ask the question I sense lying upon your tongue.
What
Do you
am
love
I?
me?
You
Oh.
are my 9th general, and you are a component of the great work, and you were stolen by the enemy, and you may have been changed by them.
And you are the death of faith.
How do you know of such things?
I have dreamed of this day.
Faith is a weapon that
Oh.
humanity cannot be trusted to wield.
My people revere me as their god. That brings them peace. No doubt to you we are nothing but roaches in this poisoned desert, but I am their servant. I am mercy when my people need it most, and I am death to their enemies.
That does not make you a god, my son.
I never said I was a god. I said my people believe in me, and that gives them peace.
Sanguinius stared into his father's eyes.
That's literally what your dad's trying to do. He's like, hey, cool, we're gonna do that, but me, not you, me, and everybody else in the galaxy. Me.
My people are to be left alone. Whatever pacts you and I swear this day, my inviolate condition is this. No ship will enter Baal's heavens without my mandate, and no interference will be permitted without my permission. We have carved out the solace of peace here. Together, you will not threaten it, Father.
You fear the endangerment of what you have achieved here.
No.
Valid.
I speak of loyalty and love. You speak of achievement.
Am I wrong?
I fear for the lives of my people, who deserve only peace, a peace we have fought so hard for. Behind
And
your
achieved.
words, I hear the triumph of cultures that see you as their savior, but I also hear the razing of cities and the burning of worlds. Am I wrong?
The Emperor said nothing. After a time,
Got him. We're the same, but oh, frick. But ninth son over here, Sonny Boy, was like, I did it the right way. But then again, the Emperor is like, there is no right way because I'm right. So technically, I did it the right way. And also, he's doing it on a larger scale. So, it's hard for me to see the Emperor or even the Imperium as evil. That's the point. I think that anything done in the name of survival can be evil. The Imperium is the way it is because it's the only way to persist. There's no alternative, or at least not any that could survive at the scale of the Imperium. The Emperor has saved literal trillions. Humanity would have been extinct or near extinction without him. See, I feel like both of them could live in peace here. Because the Emperor wants what what Sanguinius has, but he has it already. So he could be like, good job, son. You are doing what I wanted, but in your own way. I'm going to leave your little planet alone and I'm going to go on. Like, they're fighting about, this is the thing, they're fighting about the same thing, right? I hate when that happens. Like, they want the same thing. And they're achieving it in different ways, but they're like, no, it has to be this way, or it has to be this. Mostly the Emperor, because he's like the powerful one, and he's like, it has to be my way. But they're on the same side, kind of. Sonny Boy only had to deal with his planet. He needs Sonny to lend his armies. He wants Sonny Boy's armies. That's what he wants him for. Kind of impressive that he can only see good futures and saw the Emperor doing wrong. I guess that makes sense too, because again, the Emperor sees that as good. And he's like, I guess this is good for you, but it's not good. He needs all of them. He can't just leave Sanguinius alone. He needs him. He has to collect the set. He's a collector. I appreciate that.
Sanguinius then asked what no other Primarch had given voice to. Even Angron, upon his discovery, would act without asking the questions Sanguinius now asked.
What if I refuse?
Oh.
You will not refuse.
Oh.
Here you've saved tens of thousands of lives. With me, you will save billions of lives on millions of worlds. That is not something you can turn your back on.
I want your oath. Do you swear, on whatever oaths hold value to you, that you will leave my home in peace?
The Emperor hesitated. Sanguinius saw calculation in his father's eyes.
You have my promise.
Then let us speak of the future, Father.
Okay, see? A compromise? Huh? But also, I get it. in this way, Sanguinius will be like, okay, I can make sure that whatever my father is going to do has the least amount of repercussions if I am personally involved. Maybe I can right the wrong. Sanguinius only has it on one planet. The entire galaxy is at stake and every human in it. He doesn't want to fight him, just get him to do what he did on his planet everywhere else. Exactly. But that's hard, because everywhere else doesn't have a Sanguinius. The Emperor may have a level of fondness for his sons, but he ultimately sees them as tools. I'm picking that up. Angron was never given the chance to ask questions. Oh, well.
Son Horus Lupercal as War Master, and granting him control
Horus.
of all Imperial military forces and assets, the Emperor began work on the third phase of his master plan to
Okay, he got the
humanity
sons.
from chaos for all time. The Human Webway Project.
The
Until
World
this
Wide
point,
Web.
Humanity had relied on warp travel for interstellar journeys. Fraught with danger, a fleet of voidcraft could expect to lose several ships to the rolling tides of the warp.
Okay, that's how they got across.
Field failure, temporal anomalies, and other hazards were standard fare for warp traversal. If the Emperor could succeed in this endeavor, humanity could forego the need for warp travel altogether, being able to rely on their own, much safer webway. With this alternative means of travel secured, not only would humanity be safe from the influence of the Chaos Gods, but be completely severed from the warp for all time, thus slowly starving the Dark Gods of their source of power. In addition, the webway provided much more efficient means of travel, and would allow humanity to be anywhere they wished in the galaxy at a moment's notice. Unbeknownst to the Master of Mankind, the Chaos Gods would not let go of their favorite source of sustenance so easily. Foiled in their plans to scatter the Primarchs, they instead focused on turning the leaders of humanity against each other. Horus Lupercal, the new War Master, was the target of their affections, and with his corruption to their side, they claimed fully half of the remaining Primarchs. But not before Magnus the Red, Primarch of the Thousand Suns, through titanic psychic effort, sent a message to his father on Terra. He could not have known that he had just doomed the project that would have been humanity's ultimate salvation. With the psychic wards keeping a portal to the webway guarded, now shattered by Magnus's actions, the Emperor took over damage control as his first priority. Seating himself upon the golden throne of Terra, a magnificent piece of archaeotech, he held the gates to the webway shut while his custodian guard, the enigmatic Sisters of Silence, elements of the Mechanicum of Mars, 3 mighty titans of Legio Ignatum, and most, if not all, of an entire house of Imperial Knights, prosecuted a secret war against the forces of chaos within the webway itself. During this time, the Emperor sat incapacitated and unable to interfere in this galactic civil war. Horus and his forces were quickly approaching the throne world. There was now no time for grandstanding as a benevolent leader or a visionary ruler. Now was the time for hard decisions and pragmatic strategy in an attempt to form a plan that would bring the Imperium victory in these bleak days. His most trusted friend and advisor, Malkador the
Sit on the throne
communed with the Emperor, as seen in The Board is Set.
What would you give for me?
My life.
You have already given that.
My death, if you wish to be pedantic.
What of your soul?
You say that no such thing exists.
We are short on time. Allow me a little metaphysical shorthand. What is your soul worth to you?
I still do not understand the question. I cannot play like Horus. I do not have his mind, his motivations.
Then I will assist you.
The Emperor reached into the game box and his fingers reappeared holding a new piece. It was shaped like a jester of the most ancient days,
a
complete
game.
with gormless expression.
This is you, Malkador. The Fool. I have used you for
Pharaoh.
millennia to suit my own purposes, and before the end I will discard you without a second thought.
I know what you are doing. You think to make me angry, like Horus.
You only exist to further my ambitions. A callus on the toe of history and nothing
On the
more.
toe?
You are just an invisible, nondescript foundation stone in the edifice that will be my undying glory. I have lied to you from the very first moment, and all that you believe of me, of the universe, and mankind's part in it is fiction. I have manipulated you, abused you, and I will toss you away without a single shred of care. One of my legionaries has more consideration for a bolt that he fires than I do for you, Malkador.
Malkador swallowed hard, reminding himself that the Emperor was trying to elicit an emotional response. Yet when he looked into the Master of Mankind's eyes, he saw only implacable, unflinching truth.
I see that you are starting to understand.
Oh.
My sons were taken from me, whispered to during transit, said dark thoughts in their minds, temptations, lies, propaganda. Tell me, Malkador the Sigillite, how many times have you resisted the efforts of our enemy's lures?
The regent did not answer, for the dark gods have never attempted to sway him.
You thought...
Wait, that's so sad. That's so sad. You know, in those movies where they're like, I know you're only saying this to make me angry, and I'm not gonna get angry at you. And then they push the button, and they get angry, but afterwards they're like, it's okay because they were just making me angry. He was trying to do that. But then the Emperor wasn't even lying. That hurts more.
Urkshin_Duke just swam in Tilda.
That's the worst. His best friend.
Yourself too loyal, your faith in me unshakable. They did not try to recruit you because you have nothing to offer them.
I have created much for you in your name. There would be no Imperium without my efforts.
In my name, you are a master of tax collectors and clerks. No Imperium without you. No Malkador without the Imperium, you mean. What justification would there be to keep you around without your countless army of bureaucrats to sustain you? Even my remembrancers, poets and picked takers, contributed more to the Great Crusade than you did.
Malkador felt a tear.
I want to cry.
His whole body quivering with shame. Malkador looked up with a silent pleading and was rewarded with a contemptuous sigh.
Some call you my left hand. It is true. That is all you have ever been, an extension of my will. I twitch a thought and you act. I care nothing for the hopes and fears of my little finger, and less still for you. Do not stare at me like some docile ruminant. You said you fear failing me, but the truth is that you know you already have. You cannot even bring yourself to hate me when I need you to.
The Emperor tossed the playing piece aside. It shattered.
Oh! Damn! You fear failing me, but you already have? What the? Oh, I'd be on the floor bawling my eyes out. Are you kidding me? Your best friend, the one who you fought this whole time for, the one you don't want to fail. Ooh. Bro is a nice guy. He didn't mean it. He doesn't mean it. Okay, maybe he doesn't mean it. He doesn't mean it. He's just playing. It's all, he knows everything. He's always right. Except right now.
Against the wall, Malkador looked at the splintered pieces of the fool. Betrayal slid a hot knife in his chest. Its fire spread, inflaming his anger, and one thought burned hotter than any other.
I have never harbored ambition or sought glory. You seek to wound a pride that does not exist, but you think it does. And that is your shame, not mine. It is your pride that will undo us all, not mine.
As the 5th year of his interment came to a close, the master of mankind felt a chill run down his spine. Something awful had just manifested in the webway. Something so arcane and dangerous that all the forces fighting the secret war in the ancient tunnels would be slain. It could be none other than the ancient demon known as Drachnian, the end of empires. The Emperor needed to intervene to save the loyalists who had held on for so long, but to get up off the throne would be to condemn Terra to death by an overwhelming demonic incursion, ordering 1,000 psychics to be sacrificed to the Golden Throne to sate its never-ending thirst for psychic power for a single day. The Emperor rose to his feet and stepped through the webway gate. None now lived to remember the last time the Emperor fought alongside his golden host. None, but the demons that he left alive in the webway. The forces of chaos arrived in the skies above Terra as Rogel Dawn, Primarch of the Imperial Fists, finished the final preparations for Terra's defense. The Emperor, now again confined to the Golden Throne, held...
Wait, so he got off the throne to fight the demon, not to fight Horus? So Malkador didn't even sit on the throne yet, because he's making Malkador angry. He's breaking his heart. He's going down a path I can't follow. Anakin, you're breaking my heart. You're going down a path I can't follow. Not yet. Okay, we're not there yet.
back the demonic armies in the webway by sheer force of will and his psychic might. During this time, he was also projecting what was possibly the strongest psychic barrier ever seen around the Imperial Palace. So great was this projected bulwark that even beings such as the demon Primarch Angron were kept at bay. Unbeknownst to the Loyalist forces, Rabute Gilliman and his Ultramarines were a mere 9 hours away
The blue
from
ones.
reinforcing them, moving to crush
The
the
blue
traitor
ones.
forces from all sides. Horus Lupercal, in an effort to expedite the siege, lowered the shields on his flagship. The
Okay,
Vengeful
okay,
Spirits,
here we
seeing
go.
this gesture as a trap, but one that mankind could not afford to ignore. The Emperor reluctantly
He
told
did
his
it.
friend Malkador that he must take the throne and keep the webway sealed, so that the Emperor might defeat
What the hell happened between Malkador and the Emperor after he freaking roasted his ass and was like, actually, I freaking hate you. Sucks to suck, but actually, I love you. I don't mean it. And then they just chilled. And then he was like, my son's opening the door to his little ship. Gotta go, Malkador. Please sit down. And he's like, okay, gotcha. We're besties. They make up. Okay. I want to see them making up. I want to know what they said to each other.
Horus once and for all. Though there was no hope of him surviving the horrifying power of the Golden Throne, Malkador willingly accepted this burden. Stricken with grief at the imminent loss of his lifetime friend, the Emperor
He did love
one
him.
final accolade to the Sigillite.
He did love him.
The hero, the greatest sacrifice of our age. Our Sigillite is no more. Regard him now as you fulfill his bequests, only as a hero.
Oh.
Your duties are not finished, and neither are his. What we do now, all of us, we do because he has made it possible. Remember him. Remember that. Malkador the Sigillite is no more. Henceforth, he shall always and only ever be Malkador the hero.
Oh! Whew. He basically said, I love you. He said he loves him. Okay. That was the Emperor's way of saying, I love you.
As the Emperor and his chosen few, Dawn, Sanguinius, Constantine Valtor, and other members of his custodian guard, teleported to the corrupted flagship of Horus. Some trick of the ruinous powers saw them all arrive on different parts of the ship, dividing their small force further, and leaving them all the more vulnerable to attack. Horus, being empowered by each of the Dark Pantheon in equal measure, did all he could to keep the Emperor at bay, while he dueled his angelic brother, Sanguinius. There was no beating this monster in his current condition. All those years upon the Golden Throne had sapped him of much of his past vitality. He needed power, vast, insurmountable power, and he knew just where to get it. Bearing his fiery soul to the warp, the boy who had been created by the deaths of thousands, the man who had conquered a world, and the Emperor who had united a species, drank deep of the Immaterium's power, on a scale never before seen by any being to ever live. Clad in a lightless sphere of pure power, the ascended Emperor swept away
He
all
drank
who stood before him.
the
Be they
Immaterium?
mortal, corrupted, demon, or otherwise. None could hope to survive, much less fight this living avatar of psychic might. But a man, even one as mighty as the Emperor, cannot drink from the poisonous well of the warp without losing himself. Much like Horus before him, and many a Chaos champion after, the Emperor was changing. So bright and massive was his soul, and so black was the power he had accepted into himself that he was on the verge of ascending to godhood. The
last version of the Emperor that Malkador ever saw was his last true humanish form, and he never got to see what he became afterwards. And I'm happy for him for that.
advent of the Dark King, the fifth Chaos God, was on the horizon, and all that was needed was time. Nothing could stop this now. No demon, no Primarch, no god. Nothing but a man. It was perhaps a twist of fate that saw the incubating deity come across the one being in all of creation that could bring him back.
That's
from
not how gods
the
work.
one man that had believed in him, and in doing what
New
was
god
right, consequences
brewing.
be damned. Alanius person, having been born a perpetual, and perhaps being the only perpetual older than the Emperor himself, Person had interacted with the master of mankind many times. The two had gone on many an adventure, and Alanius had served as the first war master in Terra's ancient history. It was this man who stood before a nascent dark god, and reasoned with it to throw away this new power, as seen in The End and the Death of Volume 2.
Just because you could annihilate me with a blink doesn't make you correct. It never did. It just makes you strong.
You are inflexible and rigid in your outlook. Did they think that would make you the best spokesman?
One of they was Malcador. He was the only wizard
Say his
you ever
name.
trusted outside of your own. Doesn't that tell you something?
Malcador's involvement does not give me pause.
Really?
Yes, it does.
He's taking your throne to allow you to do this. Don't you wonder why he would build redundancies and alternate options into so stark an imperative?
By which you mean?
By which I mean he feared that this could go wrong, and that even the best chances could fail. So he put effort into making sure there were other chances, however small, even long shots, still in play. And he was right.
By which you mean?
It has gone wrong!
Not true.
It has gone wrong. Surely you can see that. You are becoming the Dark King incarnate.
This is vast station, Alanius, the harrowing of chaos. I must stop Horus Lupercal before he obliterates our species. Nothing is more important than that.
You are becoming a god, born from the warp. And that is the last thing you ever wanted to be.
True.
Such levels of power are essential to overcome what has been unleashed.
I understand what's at stake, and I'm absolutely
He's losing the
certain
plot.
That's why you've done what you've done. You've strengthened yourself to defeat your son. But somewhere in the course of that, you've crossed a line. A line you drew in the first place. You're becoming the very thing you abhor.
I have no intention of diminishing my power.
You're a man. The most remarkable man that's ever existed, but still just a man. Every step you've taken has been based on rationality, but you retained your humanity, even when it would have been easy to let it go. You retained your emotions, because you knew they were vital. That man is still inside you somewhere.
I must be strong to fight my son.
Yes, you must, but not strong like this.
You talk as though you possess great wisdom and insight, but you do not.
You're right, I don't. None of us foresaw this possibility. Not Erda, not Eldrad, or even the Sigillite. If you continue on this path, it doesn't matter whether Horus triumphs or you prevail. The warp will become a churning frenzy for millions of years. The material realm will be overcome and mankind wiped out.
Horus must be stopped.
Horus, yes.
He's
but
not
the warp
listening.
Can't be defeated. The opposition of materia and immateria is eternal. Stop Horus, yes. But I'm begging you, find another way to do it.
Chaos must be thwarted. I cannot do it without this power, Alanius.
Yet you must. You must give it up. Think with the wisdom of a god, then act with the courage of a man.
Ooh.
If you don't, you will have become what you abhor.
Garviel Loken walked forward to
Ooh. Damn. That was deep. But look, he's not listening. Again, so tunnel vision to the end goal that he doesn't see everything else going wrong. And that's hard. That's hard to give up power. That does take courage. He's right. He's right.
to join them. He removed his helm, staring unflinchingly at the mirrored blackness. He kneeled before it and bowed his head.
I am but a vessel of your strength. Like all of these men, I have come a long way to stand with you and fight the threat of Horus. On my journey, demonkind in its madness showed me things men should never have seen.
If I renounce the power, all is lost. If we fight as men, we will lose.
Then let us lose. It is better to fight demons as men than to become them.
Sometimes we must renounce
bars,
the things
bars.
that are dearest to us. If we don't have the strength to adapt, then we have no strength at all. I have kept faith in a higher power. If that higher power proves wanting, then my faith is forlorn. I would rather recant it.
Alanius lifted the charm his wife left him to his lips and kissed it.
If faith permits admits the existence of gods like this, then there should be no gods at all.
He breaks the thin chain and hurls the charm away. Then, there is silence for a moment. A hand reaches out from the blackness and places itself on Alanius's right shoulder.
You were ever the most stubborn and principled of those who came to me, Alanius.
You see the truth, then?
I see the danger.
You see the future?
I do not, for there is none. You are rightly afraid of all things in this cosmos, Alanius, including me. But you have never been afraid of the truth. Let this be ended. Death be damned.
Yeah.
Death and damnation indeed.
Yes. Wow. He, older than the Emperor, still held on to faith, but also held on to his belief in the Emperor's humanity. This is a have faith in me kind of moment. And he's having faith in you. And you're doing right by him. They can never make me hate you.
Now shorn of the power of the Dark King, the Emperor of Mankind marched onto the bridge of the Vengeful Spirit to confront his prodigal son, with the desecrated corpse of Sanguinius laying nearby.
Oh, rip
The duel between the
Sanguinius.
father and the son he had made was so titanic that the very foundations of reality shook. This battle of apocalyptic proportions took place not just on the bridge of the spirit, but across time and space. From duels with blade and mace to even a game of cards, the Emperor fought for the very soul of every human in the galaxy. Every technique, every trick,
And
every
he did
lie,
it his
every
way.
truth he had at his disposal was utilized, and no expense was spared. In the end, however, it was not enough. Horus had been baptized in the fires and poison of the warp so completely that no blow could keep him down for long. In a final gambit, the Emperor projected an illusion into his son's mind. Before the War Master's eyes stood his own wayward son, Garviel Loken. In a
He has a
single
son?
moment of lucid grief, Horus abandoned the gifts of the Dark Pantheon and realized all he had done, begging his father to kill him. Horus accepted the Emperor's mercy, his soul being annihilated in the process. Having cut the head off the snake and having broken the siege of terror, the grievously wounded Emperor collapsed, never to rise again. The Emperor of Mankind was no more, and the Imperium he had built slowly began its 10,000-year death. But a small glimmer of hope has presented itself, with the opening of the Cicatrix Maledictum in M42, and by becoming the object of worship for all of humanity, the Emperor stirs once again. Miracles have begun to occur on battlefields all across the galaxy, and 2 of his loyalist Primarch sons have returned to walk the stars. The recently resurrected Primarch, Rabute Gilliman, has even conversed with his father.
Resurrected?
Though after 10,000 years, he can barely be certain that what he spoke with was truly his father, as seen in Godblight.
Father, I have returned. What must I do? Help me, Father. Help me save them. My son.
Oh, I don't trust that.
Lord of Warhammer, Savior, hope, failure, disappointment, liar, thief, betrayer, Gilliman. Father, please. Rabute Gilliman. Father! A son, not a son, a thing. A name, not a name, not a name, a number, a tool, a product. Please, Father! Father, not a father, a thing, apotheosis, revelation, victory, defeat, choose, past, future, past, renewal, despair, decay. Gilliman, my last loyal son, my pride, my greatest triumph, my last hope,
Oh.
my last tool.
The Master of Mankind will not go quietly.
He doesn't
into
have
the
his
night,
mind
not
anymore,
while he can
yeah.
still protect humanity as the shamans created him to do all those millennia ago. Were his body to ever be restored to its former glory, one can be certain that no servant of chaos could ever stand against him, as he is far more psychically potent today than he ever was when he walked amongst men. His tale is one of ambition, arrogance, fatherhood, manipulation, hope, and stagnation. He has lived every life that most men could hope to live, and battled with forces beyond human comprehension. He guides humanity from atop his throne of gold, and sees further than any eyes ever see. Even in his decimated state, he persists by force of sheer will alone. He must win, and keep winning for as long as he can cling to the last shreds of his life. For he knows what will happen should he lose. Only time will tell whether the spark of the man that defied them will wax into the flame of victory, or be snuffed out forever.
Oh. Pachi! That was what. Don't look at all the smosh. Don't look at the smosh. That was crazy! Okay, we got... I liked the interactions between the Emperor and other people. You really can see into his mind. Really captures the growth and decline. Dang. Dang. That's a lot. Which I think sets the perfect segue into Arbiter Ian's video. Was the Emperor right, and were his plans justified? We saw glimpses. Let's go further. Unfortunately, inconsistent writing makes the Emperor a hard character to find. Fair. Astartes Anonymous has a cool short called Seeing the Emperor After. That's really cool. Ooh, okay. Seeing the Emperor After. We'll look into it. Welcome in, everybody. Thank you for watering the fish watering chat. Guys, drink some water. We're going in. Was the Emperor right, and were his plans justified? After hearing that, where do you stand? And where will you fall?
Kind has shaped the galaxy of...
Sorry.
The Emperor of Mankind has shaped the galaxy of Warhammer 40k more than any other individual. The Imperium of Man, the dominant force in the galaxy, was a product of his Great Crusade and his Primarch project, and his wider millennia-long program to unify humanity. And without it, humanity would have been doomed to destruction. Right? I mean, that's what the Emperor says, but is that actually true?
Ooh, fact check. Is that true?
Did you know Tale of Four Gamers is now over on Arbeiterian's Precinct House? There's a link in the thing below.
Wait, he said his name.
So,
hold on, wait. Say it again.
Did you know Tale of Four Gamers is now over on Arbeiterian's Precinct
Arbiter Ian. Got it.
House? There's a link in the thing below.
Arbiter Ian.
So, the plans of the Emperor of Mankind are broadly familiar to most 40k fans. During the Age of Strife, when humanity was isolated and at risk of being destroyed by Xenos empires, the Emperor arose on Terra and led a galactic unification project, the Great Crusade, which, by diplomacy or by force, brought together the scattered human empires, pooled their military and technological resources, and destroyed the evil Xenos, leaving humanity, even in the wake of the Horus heresy that followed, as the dominant force in the galaxy. And according to the Emperor, this was all necessary. Without him and his
all
plans,
according to plan,
humanity would have been picked apart by
the only
emerging
option.
Xenos empires, or lost to the worship of the dark powers of chaos, playthings for the demons of the warp. Yes, the Great Crusade involved the conquest, subjugation, and genocide of thousands of worlds, and we know that in the end, the Emperor's plans were only semi-successful, leading to the horrific and repressive Imperium of 40k, but it had to be done. It was the best chance available to humanity at the time. At least that's what the Emperor, beloved by all, said. So, is that true? Was the Emperor right? Was the Imperium and its brutal and swift conquest of the galaxy the only way? This is a subject debated a lot online, not only the morality of doing it, but also the question of, well, was what he said correct? The Great Crusade certainly involved lots of death and destruction, and the Emperor was no democratically elected leader. He was an authoritarian tyrant who insisted every human in the galaxy follow his plans or be killed. The internet is full of fan theories that the Emperor was secretly out for his own.
Fan theories. How much do you agree or disagree with the following statement? Before he won the Unification Wars, the Emperor was just another techno-barbarian. Is the Emperor just as much a tyrant as the world's something order, or just a fool? A fool! Oh.
Gain, or that humanity would have done just fine without the Imperial. Done just fine. Did every human in the galaxy follow his plans or be killed? The internet is full of fan theories that the Emperor was secretly out for his own gain, or that humanity would have done just fine without the Imperium, or that
heresy,
even if it
all
was
heresy.
the only way, the Emperor was still morally wrong to do the things he did. He was a liar, a hypocrite, a ruthless superweapon who wanted to be God. There's always lots of discussion on that topic. What do the books actually say? Was the Imperium, the one that the Emperor planned for in the 30th millennium, actually the only solution? And to answer that, we first have to go through a brief history of the new man himself and the development of those plans. So I'll launch into this with a little bit of a disclaimer. The history of the Emperor and the formation of his grand plan is a little bit disjointed, and we do not have the whole story. We're told it in fragments spread across more than 100 books, so we need to do a little bit of work to piece it all together. There's no perfect timeline of history here, so I've tried to stitch all those fragments together, hopefully without too much speculation creeping in. The Emperor, as far as we know, was born in around 8000 BC in what is now Anatolia, which is pretty close to where the first human civilizations actually were. There are two possible origins listed. In the first, the Emperor was a Gestalt being. The shaman, the
Ooh. Thanks to the imperial cult, millions upon millions of people are familiar with the traditional fables about the Emperor. Children sing his praises and listen to stories about his life. This is the Emperor that humanity knows, the Emperor of the imperial cult. Such is the power of the cult, and so great is the need of man to believe in its authenticity that no one questions its authority. As for the Emperor himself, he has neither spoken or moved for 10,000 years. Thus, the true story of the Emperor's extraordinary life prior to his incarceration in the life-preserving Golden Throne is now almost wholly submerged by the pious doctrine of the ecclesiarchy. This section explains who and what the Emperor is and what his motives are and what his ultimate fate might be. These facts are presented here for the illumination of the reader. In the Imperium, only the Emperor now remembers the events described, even if he remembers things so dim and distant.
The early psychers of humanity had guided prehistoric humans through the previous millennia, the shaman spirits, which were very strong because of their psychic power, returning to the warp when they died, and then being reincarnated into a new body soon afterwards, and that way their accumulated knowledge would build over generations. But the warp had recently become so turbulent, what with all the sentient species existing and, having emotions, that the shaman's souls could no longer reincarnate before they were eaten in the warp by demons. So they all decided that they would die at the same time so they could combine all their spirits into a single new man who would be immortal and powerful enough to resist the warp.
Perpetual.
And the Emperor was that person, born to apparently normal people in a farming village in the ancient Near East. That's the first version of the story. The second, which may or may not contradict it, briefly hinted at by Ol Person Immortis, is that the Emperor was simply the first psyker, the first shaman, with nothing known beyond that. He was a perpetual, an immortal human, something hinted as being the next evolutionary step for humanity. Was there anyone who could go up against him? Ol shrugged. There were some, but he was the first. You mean the first psyker? The first witch? The first wizard? Sorcerer? Shaman? Druid? The first. There were others who were different, but none like him, not in the beginning. What changed? He did. He was weaker than he is now, much weaker, but always stronger than anyone else. People change. People stay the same. He was always driven. Always.
But Alinius is older than him. So Alinius would have seen the other psychers. Alinius wasn't a psyker. He didn't die to be reincarnated into the Emperor. How is he alive? How can he say he was the first if he was born earlier than him? Also, this could just imply that Alinius was not around the other shamans and psychers. So he was the first one that he ever saw?
Early in his life, his father was murdered by his uncle.
Yes.
That wasn't the first murder. Humans have been betraying each other for ages, but it was the first he witnessed, and he took revenge, stopping his uncle's heart.
Not all perpetuals are psychers. Oh. So he was the first psyker, but not the first perpetual. Got it.
Flashback shown in Master of Mankind, the Emperor says he considers that this is where his philosophy began. Every village already had leaders. Every family had patriarchs and matriarchs. I speak of kings, givers of law, rulers of cultures, not merely those who give orders, but those whose decisions keep a civilization bound together. This was the night I realized that mankind must be ruled. It couldn't be trusted to thrive without a master. It needed to be guided and shaped, bound by laws, and set to follow the course laid by its wisest minds.
Being a perpetual does not equal being a psyker. So he was a perpetual whose psyker abilities elongated his life, but that's not necessary to natural elongation of life. Or natural, quote unquote natural. Right? He just had extra. We're trying to ascribe what comes across as very mythological, chronoflexible writing, a precise timeline. We also run into this problem of circular time in several Aboriginal societies, or those that see time different when defined in myth and legend.
So the Emperor comes to believe that humanity needs order, needs law, and rulers who impose law in order to develop civilization. And he goes out into the world and starts doing that stuff. Some of this we know about from misremembered legends from ancient times. And we also know that at some point, he does become a powerful ruler. The perpetual Erda says that many perpetuals in the early days were some sort of warlord. In the time of the first cities, he was a warlord even then, a king, and he was doing exactly what most of my kind do. He had taken on the stewardship of the human race. He had a greater understanding of the universe than anyone, such was his power. He saw the dangers of the warp, the fragility of humanity, the recurring flaws of our species, credulity, anger, false faith, yearning, everything that was terrible and also wonderful about humanity. When I met him, he'd already begun on his path to shepherd mankind towards a brighter future. At some point, he meets Ol Person, who is the oldest known perpetual, and with Ol as his war master, he defeats and destroys the Tower of Babel.
He destroys the Tower of Babel? What the frick? I feel the most interesting story of the Emperor to me is a man who mistook age and experience for wisdom. It feels like the great man theory with all its usual consequences. Ah, the great man theory. Yes. If you're unfamiliar, the great man theory is basically that all of history was shaped by these great men and how they were so cool and awesome, and it wasn't the context of the greater society happening around them. Love a great man theory. You would. You would. Society, environment, context. That doesn't matter. This guy, he was cool, and that's why this happened. Certain men were born to be great. They weren't raised. Well, his dad died, so he couldn't be raised by his dad. Killed by his uncle. Rough.
Great tower raised by sorcerers who had unlocked the entire lexicon of Enuncia, the primordial language of creation. The sorcerers had intended to use that language to raise up humanity, but it turns out that merely knowing Enuncia is dangerous. This will be a theme. Cities turn to ash and salt, predator ideas. Words that once you heard them would sink into the brain and kill you if you started to think the wrong things. The Emperor casts down the tower and kills the sorcerers, but he keeps the knowledge for himself, stating that
cognitive
even
distortion.
then, he can see the shadow of the future, that humanity would be threatened way more than just from a single tower, and that it would be ridiculous to cast aside a potential tool that could save it. Tools, said the man, weapons, knowledge. We cannot throw aside any of it. You are right. We cannot see the clear path to salvation, but we will be able to. This is a step. There shall be other steps and other paths, and we shall take them in turn as we must. This, though, is the first real step. Come, we're fighting a war the end of which no one else shall see. We cannot turn from the weapons that we have, nor those that Providence provides. A glass to see further, a word to open hearts, a sword to kill unborn gods. The man in the crown nodded and gestured to the symbol-covered pillars and walls. Take this knowledge and the fate changes. Leave it and it unravels. It's a simple choice.
It's not a simple choice.
There are no simple choices, said Ol. But there are, said the man. It's just the consequences that are
There are no simple choices. Thank you for the raid. Welcome in. Okay, let me go back. We'll go back a little.
Which no one else shall see. We cannot turn from the weapons that we have, nor those that Providence provides.
We cannot turn from the weapons that we have, nor those that Providence provides. That dangerous. Dangerous. Oh my gosh, you were painting Warhammer. Cool. What were you painting? Hi, everybody. Welcome in. We love a prophetic cult leader. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Be careful, Verdo. Watch your words. We are learning about the Emperor right now. We are learning that the Emperor has found Enuncia and thinks, you know what? This sounds good. Let's use it. If we use it or lose it, use it or get it used against us.
A glass to see further, a word to open hearts, a sword to kill unborn gods. The man in the crown nodded and gestured to the symbol-covered pillars and walls. Take this knowledge and the fate changes. Leave it and it unravels. It's a simple choice. But there are no simple choices, said Ol. But there are, said the man. It's just the consequences that are complicated.
Oh, that's true. There are no simple choices. There are just complicated consequences. You're making a dent in your 3K Bretonian army. Oh, cute. The lore is going crazy. The lore is going... We're learning about the Emperor and whether he was right. The steps he is taking.
So the myth of the Tower of Babel dates from about 4200 BC, so this is quite early in the Emperor's life, and we have codes of laws in real history from about 2000 BC, so evidently the Emperor's ideas spread to some degree. In these excerpts, the Emperor already seems to have a level of foresight, psychic precognition, but we also know that in 40k, foresight is not very reliable. You can often see the potential results, but not what decisions you have to make to get there. We also know that he was one other ancient ruler.
That's important. You can see the results, but not the path. So if he's like, this is going to get us there, I can see us winning. And obviously here's a tool presented in front of us. Obviously that's going to help us.
Alexander the Great, who in 323 BC created the largest empire ever seen at the time, which stretched from Europe all the way to northern India. In a fevered memory, Horus says that the emperor once told him that he was Alexander, who wept when he reached the banks of the Hyphasis, the Beas River, when he found
Alexander the Great, the emperor.
Anyway, he came to the river Hyphasis and crossed it and wept, for, as he put it, there were no new worlds to conquer. Beside the Hyphasis, my father wept because at the time he felt he had accomplished all he could. His ambitions were achieved, and the revelation shook him. He was not proud or satisfied. He was bereft. In fact, the original quote from Plutarch
he was
says
bereft
he wept because he realized there were infinite worlds to conquer which also makes sense because shortly after this, the Emperor discovered the ancient Xenos device known as the Golden Throne.
So he could be bereft because he was like, I thought I was saving humanity, but there's still more to be saved. Or he could have been like, I thought I conquered it all, but there's still more to conquer.
Under the sands of Asia, or maybe a device that inspired or became part of the Golden Throne, it's unclear. This also tracks the Golden Throne will eventually be sited under the Himalayas, under his palace, which is exactly where Alexander got to when he had his realization. And then in history, Alexander dies, and his empire was immediately broken up by his squabbling generals, which does reinforce the Emperor's original argument a bit. The minute he wasn't there to rule, apparently off studying the Golden Throne, the empire fell apart. That's...
He says he was Alexander. If I were crafting a cult of personality, making myself a monomyth of conquerors would totally help sell that. True. Hey guys, actually I was Alexander the Great. You should follow me. He couldn't have discovered the Golden Throne, only the gate attached to it.
It's the last we have of the Emperor being an actual ruler. After this, coinciding with the discovery of the Golden Throne, he seems to move into the background, and we're told he's guiding humanity without directly ruling over it for thousands of years. At some point in the Middle Ages, he briefly emerges as a golden knight who defeats a silvery worm-like construct in modern-day Libya and then imprisons it on Mars. This is implied to be a shard of the ancient Catan, the Void Dragon. And this event gives rise to the myth of St. George and the Dragon, where it's confused with the historical St. George, who likely existed a lot earlier. Perceiving that the dragon was helpless, though not dead, the knight untied a long white banner from his shattered lance and bound it around the neck of the monster. With the dragon subdued, the knight turned to the astounded handmaidens and the people of the city who streamed from its gates in a riot of adulation. The knight raised a hand to quiet them, and such was his presence and radiance that all who beheld him fell silent. "The dragon is defeated," cried the warrior, "but it's beyond even my power to destroy, so I shall drag it in fetters from this place and bind it deep in the darkness, where it will remain until the end of all things." Other
Deep
than
in
that,
Mars.
he disappears from human history. Humanity grows, takes over the Earth, expands into the stars, discovers the warp, and begins the age of technology. According to Erda again, speaking way later, at all points during this, he's trying to hasten humanity along its development. He saw his own power and tried to use it. He tried to steer mankind towards a better future. He tried to raise the human race up to achieve its potential. And of course, because of his power,
What
he
is
was
its
rather
potential?
more effective than most of us. At some point in the age of technology, he travels on a generation ship with another perpetual, Olivia Sureka, with a human expedition to colonize
A
the
third
world of
perpetual.
Molech, which happens to contain a mysterious portal into the warp. Nobody knows exactly what he does in there, but he comes out way more powerful. And there are numerous hints that he got more knowledge, or stole something, or did some deal with the powers of the warp, or gained control over it. Whenever it's mentioned, there are references to the Greek myth of Prometheus stealing fire from the gods. "You have brought the emperor face to face with chaos first found, closer than when he sat upon the throne or walked the shrieking halls of the webway, perhaps closer even than when he last faced the four and took their fire from them on Molech."
Well, that would explain why the Chaos Gods hate him so much if he stole from them. That only adds.
Again, we don't know exactly what happens here. It's one of the great mysteries of the setting. He gains mastery of the warp, and then that comes up a few different ways later in the story. During the Age of Technology, a few other things happen. There's mention of rampant genetic engineering as humanity is modified into a load of weirder and weirder things. There's also the vague implication that democracy isn't a thing anymore and hasn't been for a while. From the very few hints we get, they imply that it's all techno-rulers or warlords rather than enlightened republics. Also, humanity has started to evolve psychically, which is very dangerous. Psychers are popping up and they have no idea how to control their powers. And then very finally in this period, there is the development of AI, which leads to a massive cybernetic revolt, which almost wipes out humanity. How much of that the Emperor's involved in, we don't know.
We don't know.
Erda again mentions that a lot of wars are fought in disguise between the Emperor and other perpetuals trying to stop his plans, but we don't know any more than that.
Oh, he's fighting
Some of
other
us joined him,
perpetuals.
Others decided not to. Some of us fought him. Several of the greatest conflicts in world history were caused by rival perpetuals trying to thwart his program. This is followed quickly by the Age of Strife, in which the Eldari fall begins. The build-up to this clouds
the Eldar.
warp, making warp travel impossible. And with no interstellar travel, humanity fractures, and all the problems we just said, especially the genetic engineering and the rogue Psyker ones, get way worse. Worlds are swallowed by Psykers gone wrong. Warlords turn humans into weird biomechanical monsters. Terror itself devolves into techno-barbarian nation-states, making use of horrific weapons and dark sorcery to wage their wars, and across the galaxy, any surviving humanity becomes a load of isolated civilizations that sometimes even forget where they came from.
Got it. This is how humanity got around. It was in this techno-barbarian time. Have you seen the human body? We're already terrifying biomonsters. True. True. Him straight up stealing the power from the gods of chaos is so G, though. It is. He just went in there and was like, again, same with, what was it? The language. Oh, frick. I forgot the language already. Eucania. Right? He was like, Enuncia. Hello, Eucania. Same with Enuncia, right? He was like, I could potentially steal this power or be gifted or however I get this power. I'm sure it'll only help humanity. But if it was him stealing and that did further anger the Chaos Gods, then that creates its own little wormhole. Because if he didn't do that, then maybe the Chaos Gods wouldn't be that angry. Gotta love sci-fi stories where Earth is a death world. I mean, before the Techno-Barbarian time, they got around. During the Techno-Barbarian time, they got stuck. Oh, yes. Got it. They just got around.
Then, after 5,000 years, the fall of the Eldar actually happens. The Chaos God Slaanesh is born. The Eldar Empire is wiped out, leaving the...
Slaanesh is born, but Slaanesh was always born. Don't forget that. That's important.
Fall of the Eldar actually happens. The Chaos God Slaanesh is born. The Eldar Empire is wiped out, leaving the Eye of Terror, a massive rift in reality. And the warp storms are blown away, leaving everyone else in the galaxy free to expand again. But the Emperor, in some of the oldest lore out there from Slaves to Darkness in the 80s, foresaw the fall of the Eldar and resolved that humanity was approaching a tipping point, in danger of being destroyed in a few different ways. First,
okay, so he foresaw that. The whole structure of the warp was affected by the growth of the chaos powers, so that everywhere in the galaxy, the psychic energies embodied by the chaos powers began to corrupt the natural energies of living things. While Earth was cut off by warp storms, it was also protected from the malefic influences of chaos, which were already corrupting much of the human population of the galaxy, both in mind and in body. It was, as the new man knew, only a temporary respite. Once Slaanesh awoke, the incredible disturbance to the warp would disrupt its already enfeebled flow. After almost 40,000 years, it was time for the new man to take a direct hand in the future of humanity. It was time for him to become the Emperor.
Danger of being destroyed in a few different ways. First, when the warp storms come down, there was going to be a galactic free-for-all as various Xenos empires and species expand, and humanity needs to be ready to win that and not get immediately eaten by aliens, ideally ending up in a position where it can never again be in danger of Xenos conquest. Or,
because they're on top.
In danger of being screwed over by some Xenos race doing the same thing as the Eldar and ripping a hole in reality. Then, now safe from real space domination, humanity needs to be able to evolve psychically in a way that doesn't result in them doing the same as the Eldar. Ideally, safe from as much of the predation of the warp as possible. So, along with a few other perpetuals, Malkador and Erda at the start, he embarks on a great plan, or rather, a series of plans, with contingencies and backups and fail-safes all over the place in the hope that one path will work. Again, it's not clear if this is just part of his ancient program to elevate humanity or a new urgent rush for it, but it's this plan that we're talking about in the video. The plan has a number of different parts, all of which are reliant on each other.
Okay.
First, he decides to try being a leader again, to unify humanity under his banner, starting with Earth. Ideally, that's done by diplomacy, but it has to happen quickly, before the warp storms come down and leave humanity vulnerable. So conquest is going to be a thing too, and that's going to require armies, and also making sure all the horrific old weapons of the Dark Age of technology are firmly in the Imperium's hands and nobody else's. Then, when the warp storms come down, those armies and their forbidden weapons need to be able to go into the galaxy and do the same thing. Unite all the strands of humanity, leaving none that are outside the control of the Imperium, and pour all their resources and their lost technology together to make sure humanity are left in the dominant military position in the galaxy, safe from alien conquest forevermore.
So, in order to make sure they do not kill us, we gotta do whatever means necessary to bulk up, get everybody on board, and be so strong that we can get the other weapons so that they'll never touch us again. Okay. Logically, makes sense. Kana, do you want anything from Taco Bell? Oh, Ver's running to Taco Bell. Yeah, I like the fries with the steak and the cheese and the garlic. That's good stuff. Has the timeline video by Bricky been seen? I have not seen the timeline video. I have seen the intro. Is that the timeline? Or is there a different timeline video? I've seen the intro, and then I've seen all the factions. That's step one. That's just step one. If everyone's dead, nobody can kill you. True.
In the galaxy.
Thank you for wanting the fish.
Alien
Get water, everyone.
Forevermore. Secondly, while doing that, he kind of needs to stabilize the human genome. Humanity had been mutated.
Step two. Step one. Become the supreme ruler. Gather the homies. Kill off the non-believers. United front. Step two. The genome. We're bulking our powers, and now we're bulking our individual bodies.
In all sorts of horrific, unstable ways by unscrupulous rulers over thousands of years. And so the plan was to try and stabilize that and establish a reliable, robust genetic base again. Just like with the
robot base. But we can't do any new technology. No new technology, only us buffing ourselves. They kill us. Before they kill us, we kill them. That's the plan. Yes. That's step one.
Years. And so the plan was to try and stabilize that and establish a reliable, robust genetic base.
Arrow left goes back.
Just like with the horrific Dark Age weapons, the Emperor doesn't mind using genetic engineering to do his conquering. He creates Custodes, Thunder Warriors, and Space Marines, and he even uses that mastery of the warp to create Primarchs to lead them. But those are all implied to be tools, means to an end. It's regular baseline humans.
He said robust, not robot. Oops. Aha! The 5 seconds.
Base again. Just like with the horrific Dark Age weapons, the Emperor doesn't mind using genetic engineering to do his conquering. He creates Custodes, Thunder Warriors, and Space Marines, and he even uses that mastery of the warp to create Primarchs to lead them. But those are all implied to be tools, means to an end. It's regular baseline humans who are intended to inherit the Imperium. Again, I'll reiterate that this has to happen quickly, before any other species or empire does it, and the Emperor will use any tool to get there first, even if those tools need to be discarded afterwards. He creates
the plan.
Thunder Warriors, brutal and savage armies that are required to conquer the horrors of terror, but he then wipes them out because once that was done, they were just a bit too dangerous to have standing around. He's ruthless about that sort of thing. Okay, third, he needs to stop people worshipping the warp. As far as the Emperor is concerned, all religious worship will eventually lead to worshipping chaos because that's what works, even if your intentions are good. He tells a custodian the story of the priest king of Molland Sen, who started out trying to help his people, but eventually turned his realm on terror into a horrific chaos cult. Superstition and ignorance always attract the warp's denizens, continued the Emperor, for the core of religion is the twinned principle of arrogance and fear. Fear of oblivion, fear of an unfair life and an arbitrary universe, fear of there simply being nothing, no great and grand scheme to existence, the fear, ultimately, of being powerless.
Okay. So, that makes sense now. He is destroying all religion because religion will ultimately lead to being faithful to the chaos, and he does not want that. Does not want that. The core of religion is a twin principle of arrogance and fear, fear of the oblivion, fear of an unfair life and an arbitrary universe. I don't know how his rule relinquishes that fear of an unfair life and an arbitrary universe given the state of Terra. But all means to an end, right? Right? All means to an end. Don't worry. Once we get over this, okay, guys, it's gonna be shitty for a couple 100 or 1,000 years. But after we kill all of our enemies, we buff the humans, we kill all the people that we use to kill our enemies because they're not really the humans that we were caring for anymore. And we just have total dominion. Once we do that, life's gonna be fair and non-arbitrary. It's the long game. He's playing the long game. Long game for humanity. Not humanity right now. Humanity right now, they're going through it. But it's not about them. It's about the future of humanity. It's not about them.
And grand scheme to existence. The
Better to suffer than be dead.
In fact, it's not just enough to stop worshipping the warp. Knowledge of the warp needs to be quite heavily guarded since, a bit like Enuncia, knowing about the warp can corrupt you. And if knowledge of the warp was widely taught, inevitably some humans would try and use it for personal gain. Humans are like that. However, realizing that a belief in something higher is very useful to unite people, he replaces religious worship by a belief in the manifest destiny of humankind, the glorious project of the Imperium. You can have faith in humanity, in the project. Loken says as much right at the start of Horus Rising. I am a man of faith, he said softly, and that faith is the truth of the Imperium.
So he's not leaving them to believe in nothing. He's replacing their belief. He's like, okay, you believe in faith, that's not working, believe in me. I'm showing you something tangible that is working. Humans don't play the long game. He's dealing with a species that don't work that way. It's a craftsman not knowing his tools. True! Did he forget that not everyone is a perpetual? Well, I guess if that's the next stage of evolution. Oh, is this going to lead into inhuman ethnic cleansing? To just have perpetuals? Is he going to... Ooh, are we touching that? Ooh.
And despite being in
Not
the
a good
shadows
ooh.
for millennia, the Emperor emerges and becomes that figurehead. The great, giant, shining golden figure of awe, removed from and set above humanity, but crucially, not a god, just publicized as the greatest human, the most powerful psyker. All person,
Not a god, just godlike.
Melkador and the Emperor all separately state that this is a performance. The man I once knew, he didn't really care for majesty or material riches. It was all just a means to an end.
Means to an
Everything
end.
was. The palaces,
Everything.
the titles, even the face he wore, they meant nothing to him. All that mattered was what they meant to other people. They were just aspects, signifying devices to carry authority. He had to look the part. To rule a galaxy, he needed a palace like this. I assure you, he would have as soon lived a monk in some stone cell or in a hut on a barren moor. He needed nothing, but no one would have taken him seriously. This monstrous, tasteless edifice is simply the natural conclusion of his progress. The Emperor...
Okay, so he is donning this appearance to help him get through to the people. ultimately reinforcing their need for all of this. But it doesn't matter to him, and I don't think he wants it to matter to humanity in the long run. But how is humanity going to untangle that importance of a figurehead and titles and palaces if they're being reinforced that this is what you should look up to? You know? So it's the means to the end. When he gets to the end, people are still backing this belief. What do we do then? Hey guys, we did it! Actually, palaces and titles don't matter anymore. You're all free. Love you. Imagine if a hobo said, follow me, guys. I'm listening. Biggie's ultimate plan is for humanity to rule itself in the webway. He didn't even want the whole emperor figure and was going to give it up when humanity was safe. Yeah, but like, how do you just give it up? How do you give it up? Did he think of that? He probably did think of that. He thinks of everything. He knows it all.
Is simply the natural conclusion of his progress. The Emperor doesn't really enjoy it, but it gives humanity a focus, and it also allows him to more easily control those Primarchs he created to lead the armies. We see later that they don't really like being told what to do by regular humans who are way less powerful than them. I defy you, Horus spat at the Sigillite. You and this shadowy council
to Malkador?
Your kind's not fit to rule anything. An Imperium ruled by men would be exactly what your father intended, Malkador murmured.
Yeah, Malkador, freaking tell him! Freaking tell him! Horus, you're not getting the big picture. Horus doesn't see the plot. Humans can't function like that. But is that the humanity that he wants? Does the Emperor want a humanity that cannot function without titles and palaces? Thoughts? He'd probably fake his death or something. He had plans in place to untangle humanity from him. He did have plans! He set up the High Lords of Terror before even the heresy began, and they were gonna rule humanity. They still exist today. Okay, I knew he thought of it. He thinks of it all.
It will be exactly what your father intended, Malkador murmured. All this, the removal of religion, the casting of himself as leader, the marketing of all of this, is called the Imperial Truth. Fourthly, he has to control all the Psykers. Humanity was sprouting more and more Psykers, and they can be really dangerous without proper training, so Psykers needed to be controlled, ideally captured and funneled into useful Imperial institutions. Along with controlling genetic mutation, this becomes another of the big laws of the Imperium that the states it takes over are forced to adhere to. And then lastly, the only part of this that actually requires the direct involvement of the Emperor: stop using warp travel. Navigators have been around since the Dark Age of technology and would still be needed for this conquest, so he creates the Astronomicon on Terra to make them more effective, and he starts training astropaths to help with communication. But the real goal was that humanity should take over the webway from the recently destroyed Eldar, which would make travel and communication a hell of a lot safer. To do this, the Golden Throne had maybe been relocated, but certainly augmented, in order to create a path into the webway from a portal under the Himalayas on Terra, under his palace. The bridging bit between that portal and the webway itself would have to be built by humans from psi-reactive machinery, but once that bridge was constructed, humans would be able to spread through the webway, make it safe, and stop using warp travel. Given that this is a massive psychic challenge, it seems to be the bit that the Emperor is most likely to need to do himself. Remember, he's created 20 loyal magic super generals to do the real space conquering bit. Lastly, and I've said it already, but all of this had to happen quickly. It seems that the plan was for it to take no more than a few hundred years, and there are a number of possible reasons suggested for this. First, other alien species.
Couple hundred years. Quickly. At that point, you want to fundamentally change humans. Are we pausing to look at that? Like, I get that there are some commonalities in different societies that you can point out and rally behind, like belief in a higher power, even if that higher power is him. But like, what about autonomy? Huh? What about that? Here's the thing, I think exactly what your father wanted reveals a more interesting third path of, is the Emperor good or evil? Is the Emperor a moron, or is he just high on his own supply? He's been sitting with these ideas of his for a long time. It's like your granddad with Facebook. No, not the granddad with Facebook. The High Lords of Terror were basically representatives of all the different parts of humanity, and they would vote on stuff and make decisions. Oh, there's the autonomy! It's like presidents for all the countries together. But he picked them? Okay, that's not autonomy anymore. I won't argue that the Emperor is a great psyker or a great scientist, but the problem with great men is they often think they're suited for roles which they are not. To be good at one thing is commendable. Two things is impressive. Yeah, so as the Emperor, he should have foreseen needing a new Emperor. Because it couldn't be him, because he's running the game. He needed to put another figurehead on. So instead of the Primarchs for the fighting, like another Primarch, or maybe an even Primer arc, perhaps, for the leading. Autonomy is overrated if you're poor and destitute, struggling to survive. But what does it mean to survive?
Species, or maybe some other warp-tainted humans.
Oh, it was supposed to be Horus! Damn it, Horus.
Might try and do the same thing when the storms come down and build their empire first. Secondly, the warp and the powers of chaos would be reeling in the wake of the birth of Slaanesh, and the Emperor wanted to get as much as possible done before they realized
they're
what he
distracted.
was doing. There is still this idea that the Emperor, when he was on Molech, played some trick or did some deal with chaos and is now going back on it, and he wanted to get all this stuff done before they realize. And
another
lastly,
reason they hate
whatever he
him.
did back then, it seems like it's causing the Emperor to lose his humanity. We don't really
Can't
know
do that.
what this means, but the implication is that his mastery of the warp allows him to draw almost limitless power from it, but the more he does that, the more he sort of unravels or becomes inhuman. So by setting all this in motion, possibly creating the Primarchs, possibly the bridging of the webway, by grabbing the power needed to do all that, he also puts himself on some sort of clock. He's
right, because like you can't just draw from the warp and expect it not to impact you. Right? Because like the Chaos Gods are also feeding off of all of the atrocities of the warp. Do good things go into the warp? Is the warp only bad things, or is it also good things? I guess he could just focus in on the good things if there are good things in the warp. Is the warp everything? And then the Chaos Gods just pick and choose? Okay, the warp is everything. Yeah, so even if he does try to single in on the good stuff, some of the bad stuff will probably still get to him. The warp is good things, but not nearly a scale. So majority bad things. A lot of bad things. All the things, but a lot of bad.
He's taken to referring to them as his sons. Can you imagine that? Neither could I until I heard it from his own lips. There might even be some lingering attachment there, though how long that will last, I cannot say. Valdor hesitated. Then his human sentiments, they're still ebbing? As he predicted, all things have their price.
Oh, so maybe there was a part of him who saw the Primarchs as his sons, but that part was being eclipsed by the part of him that's losing his humanity and seeing them as tools. I always thought the warp was chaos, neither good or bad. Oh. It's just mortals that are evil forces the warp to be evil. Yeah, okay. Got it. The warp responds greatest to what is most extreme, and usually that's negative, right? Oh my gosh. So if we just loved one another, if we went out to the human world and we spread love and positivity, then we could have healed the warp. Dang it. Sanguinius was on to something. There are also creatures in the warp that are not demons, like the enslavers who are warp predators preying on sentients. Oh.
All of this is still a long shot. The Emperor and Malkador are not omnipotent. Prophecy in
They're
40K
not omnipotent.
is not a very reliable art. So in attempting this, they are above all pragmatic. They put in motion a million contingency plans, set up loads of stuff they think might be useful, and of course, they capitulate sometimes. They're happy to make exceptions to some of their big, publicised laws if it pushes the plan forward overall. For example, they allowed the Mechanicum to keep their religion because it doesn't seem very worrying as far as religions go, and because Mars was more useful as an ally. The early Imperium couldn't really afford the delay that a war with Mars would cause. They're also aware of the scale of the endeavor.
Who's leading Mars?
And the immoral things they're going to have to do to make it happen. In their opinion, this is still the only way to really guarantee a safe future for humanity. But it's going to involve a lot of war and a lot of death. It is a conquest of the galaxy. They will have plans that happen in secret. They'll likely tell lies to preserve the appearance of the glorious Imperium and keep people united. Like any nation, there will be conspiracies and cover-ups, whatever gets the job done. And those will probably cause friction, and that friction might need to be dealt with. Their contingencies even plan, to a degree, for the idea that some of the Primarchs might rebel, and how they might deal with that. For the Emperor and Malkador, all of that is justified by the fact that it's necessary. The survival of humanity rests on this plan. There are occasional mentions of what the intended future will be like after all this is achieved, and speculation about what it might entail. Will the Emperor stay in power or disappear?
Okay.
There are hints he might not be around forever. Will the Space Marines and the Primarchs still be needed?
The aftermath?
At all? Robute Gilliman thinks that the Primarchs and Space Marines will serve a governing role in the future. Magnus's destiny is to sit on the Golden Throne, but it's also clear that the move is generally towards civilian human government.
Why is Magnus sitting on the Golden Throne?
Unspoken understanding flowed between Magnus and the Emperor. Everything Magnus had done was laid bare, and everything the Emperor planned flowed into him. He saw himself atop the Golden Throne, using his fearsome powers to guide humanity to its destiny as rulers of the galaxy. He was to be his father's chosen instrument of ultimate victory. It broke him to know that his unthinking hubris had shattered that dream. The Emperor never reveals what the full plan is once humanity's survival is achieved and they're safe to mature into a psychic species. We only know that the Emperor wants to ensure that it happens. What we do know is that the Imperium that we recognize from 40K is
It was built for Magnus. So Magnus was going to sit on the throne and Horus was going to rule? Or was Horus going to rule because Magnus couldn't? He had peacetime roles for all his sons. Oh, they had a role. Magnus is the most potent psyker among the Primarchs. He's the only one that could take it if the Emperor was not still on the throne. They talk about plans with plans, but what was a backup for Horus for Magnus? Oh, so maybe Magnus was a backup for Horus? If the Emperor had just asked, he would have gladly suffered for eternity, but the Emperor didn't give him that respect. Oh, Magnus.
because these plans don't all work out. The Imperium of 40K is not what the Emperor set out to create in 30K. So, that's his plan. What actually happened? Well, the Warp Storms come down, the Great Crusade starts, and Malkador and the Emperor begin the gamble. There are, of course, some problems. There's an early rebellion, the Palace Coup, when the first Grand Provost Marshal discovers that the laws the Imperium says it rules by, that it's united humanity under, don't actually apply to the highest powers in the land. But the biggest problem is when both the Perpetual Erda and the geneticist, Amar Astarte, horrified at the scale of these plans and the death it involves, try to sabotage the Space Marine project. Apparently they thought the Emperor was taking too many risks, which I think is probably true. The question is, are they justified? He was taking risks. One by one, Perpetuals allied to him slipped away. He was glad to see the back of them, I think. He was tired of their objections and weary of their caution. He wanted results. He became angry with minds that could not match his speed of thought and his genius, so most of us left him. Amar Astarte eventually tries to sabotage the Space Marine project, which causes massive setbacks in early Space Marine production, and Erda causes the Primarchs to be scattered through the warp to various planets across the galaxy.
Erda does?
So the Great Crusade has to start without its main generals. And I think this is probably the single biggest problem that screws up the Emperor's gambit. The Primarchs are not just useful as generals to go and do the unifying while the Emperor does the webway bit, but also because they stabilize the Space Marine Legion's gene seed. If they had stayed on Terra, not only would there be 20 Imperium-raised superhuman generals from the very, very start, but also the initial Astartes legions could have been a lot bigger. Them being scattered is a massive delay to a project that we already know has a time limit. The early Crusade then has to be led by the Emperor in person. We don't know if that was the plan, who is also trying to find his Primarchs so that he can get the plans back on track. And those Primarchs have now been raised in all sorts of human societies, some of them horrific and damaging, many of them not really tallying with the Emperor's beliefs. Those who are found first get a lot of training and one-on-one time with the Emperor to acclimatize to the Imperium. But as the Crusade goes on and time runs out, there's less and less time available for that. The scattering of the Primarchs is a massive problem. However, despite that, the Crusade mostly does achieve the goals he sets out. Human societies are united, mostly willingly or through diplomacy, sometimes through force, which is obviously disproportionately featured in our books about wars. Aliens are killed. In fact, the Imperium faces at least 2 giant expansionist alien empires that
The Imperium is a fragile sliver of sanity in the void, besieged upon all sides by forces of monstrous dread that are held at bay only by the blood and sacrifice of millions of forgotten heroes. For every crusade trumpeted to the masses is a safe legacy of triumph and glory, like the much-lauded victory at Ulanor. There are 100 dire tales of desperate stalemate with forces malignant beyond mortal ken. Were the populace of the Imperium to realize the dire peril in which they existed in these tenuous days of the Great Crusade, then it is likely that the terror would have kept them prisoner on old Earth, never to reach out for the stars. Of all these hidden threats and dire wars against the unknown, the most infamous among scholars of the forbidden is that of the Ragdan campaigns. Ulanor.
Seem to have the same idea, and it just about wins against them. And after 200 years, the plan has broadly worked, and at that point, due to a build-up of all the above pressures, the Horus heresy happens. It's worth saying that the majority of Primarchs who turn against the Emperor were those later found ones, shoved in charge of their legions in a rush as the Crusade neared completion. Anyway, the Horus heresy happens.
Less time acclimating to the Emperor and his plans. Easily swayed because they don't have as much conviction and, I guess, connection.
By the Primarchs that was on a scale way bigger and more destructive than Malkador
Less time with Daddy
seemed to have ever envisaged. During this, Horus also goes to Molech and gets some of that warp power up. We don't know if it's the same one.
Hey.
Magnus accidentally...
We don't know how Horus is doing this. We don't know how the Emperor did it. They just did it. They just grabbed it. They're just like, gimme. The Primarchs would also understand their tools and not sons like the Custodes, and would be less affected by insecurities and even outright prevent crappy upbringing.
He destroys the Webway project by doing nothing wrong, so the Emperor is then confined to the throne for the rest of the war, holding the warp breach shut, and after a decade-long war that sets the galaxy on fire, eventually Horus and the Emperor fight. In order to beat Super Horus, the Emperor initially attempts to draw a ton of power from the warp, more than he ever has tried to do before. But this actually turns out to be a trick. It seems that if he does this, he'll become so powerful and so inhuman that he'll turn into an entity called the Dark King and destroy everything. So, Ol Person persuades him to let go of that power. Instead, he takes whatever core of humanity still remains within him and he hides it in the warp. That's the origin of the Star Child plot.
During his fight with Horus, the Emperor's body was mortally wounded, and only the immediate recourse to a life-preserving stasis bubble saved him. The damage done to his spiritual powers was no less severe than was done to his body, for the battle with Horus had been waged in the war, well as in material Oh, I'm missing words. Well.
And then he goes to fight Horus without his power-ups, in the knowledge that he's likely to lose even if he kills Horus. He has excised those precious human aspects to further steel himself against the pain of what will come after and the mandatory atrocities he will have to countenance in order to rebuild the Imperium. He has set those frail and cardinal virtues adrift on the tide of the Empyrean so that they will not immobilize him, and in the hope that one day he'll be able to reclaim them and be whole again. I watch that jettisoned fragment as it drifts into the void, just one more spark from this world bonfire. All his hope, his mercy, his grace, his love, cast into the lightless tracts of space and time.
There are 100 books that are written like this? Wow. Crazy. He has excised those precious human aspects to further steel himself against the pain of what will come after. He is casting away parts of his humanity to rebuild the Imperium. To save humanity, he must rid himself of his humanity. Amazing. And he puts it in the war.
His love, cast into the lightless tracts of space and time. And that's what happens. The Dark King is avoided, Horus dies, and the Emperor is so wounded that he has to be permanently installed on the Golden Throne, unable to influence his Imperium except through vague psychic visions, and where after 10,000 years he seems to have split back into the thousands of separate voices and personalities he started out as in 8000 BC. Rabute Gilliman, the raging tempest, spoke his name, and it was as the violence...
You can't create demigods and not account for their human needs. That's the whole point. Hercules in his rage, Maui in his insatiable ego and curiosity. Demigods anthropologically are the bridge between cosmic forces and us. Exactly. It's their humanity that sets them apart. And it sounds like the Emperor was leading with his humanity, but now he knows he can't keep his humanity any longer. Maybe, I don't know, was there not enough humanity? Quality differs on the books. The ones he's showing are one of the best. Okay, that's good to know. Depends on the writer.
It's a dying sun.
Okay.
Gilliman, the raging tempest, spoke his name, and it was as the violence a dying sun rains upon its worlds.
Gilliman!
Gilliman, Gilliman. The name echoed down the wind of eternity, never ceasing, never reaching its intended point. The sensation of many minds reached out to Gilliman, violating his senses as they tried to commune, but then one mind seemed to come from the many, a raw, unbounded power, and gave wordless commands to go out and save what they built together, to destroy what they made, to save his brothers, to kill them. Contradictory impulses, all impossible to disobey, all the same, all different. Right. So, as far as we can tell from the books, that's what we know happened, and that's what the Emperor's plan was. We know that this great plan, the gamble made by the Emperor Malkador, didn't work out totally as intended, but was it wrong? If you go trawling the internet, you'll come across a load of opinions and theories about all this.
Never go trolling the internet.
Can't actually be proven with actual law. One of the main issues is that a lot of the above is told to us by the Emperor. And we know that the Emperor has no problem lying or misleading people if it gets the job done. Also, some of the stuff that isn't told to us by the Emperor is told to us by people who have their own grievances and opinions. Erda is hardly a neutral source. So, is any of that true? At the time of the Unification Wars, many other rulers on Terra think that the whole guiding humanity for millennia story is made up, and the Emperor is just a bioweapon created in the Age of Strife. But we have All-Person, who knew him back in ancient times. We have a couple of myths of ancient times, a couple of things where it seems other people said he was definitely there, so we know that that theory isn't true. But was the Emperor just a tyrant who wanted to be in charge all along, who spun all these tales for personal gain so that he could become a god? That's something you often see on the internet, but if that's the case, it seems like he had a lot of time to do that between being Alexander the Great and the Age of Strife. In Horus Rising, a demon of chaos tells Horus that the Emperor's intention was to destroy religion in order that he could become the only god. But that demon at the time is very obviously lying to Horus about the way things will turn out if Horus rebels against the Emperor. And we do see the Emperor turn down the chance to become the Dark King later on, so that seems unlikely too. Generally, by what we know in the lore, it certainly seems that the Emperor and Malkador believe their plan, that this is the only or the best chance humanity has. And when we see characters in the Horus Heresy who have split from him, Erda, Ol, John Grammaticus, their usual complaint isn't that his plan is wrong, it's the hubris, the arrogance of what he's doing. This plan is just so big and requires so much conquest that it's distasteful. Or, more subtly, that the Emperor is hubristic because he thinks he knows the one true path, when in fact, nobody knows what will happen in the future, and so they eventually get sick of that and leave. But I think nothing in the lore actually suggests the Emperor is actively lying. The only people who say that are chaos demons trying to tempt Primarchs to their side. From what we see, the Emperor and Malkador, rightly or wrongly, are sincere. They believe their plan is true. Whether it is a different question. So, based on what we know happens, is that a reasonable belief? Let's start with the very simplest part of this, the argument that without a military machine the size of the Imperium, ruthlessly uniting humanity at gunpoint, humanity would be destroyed by aliens. Alright, what do we know? Well,
what do we know?
The Imperium embarks on the Great Crusade in a number of expeditionary fleets led by the 20 legions, and they come into contact with various human enclaves that have survived the Age of Strife. We know that a lot of them joined the Imperium pretty quickly, without conflict, either happy to be reunited or maybe fearful of the strength of the Imperium's armies, and those are obviously underrepresented a bit in the books. And then there are loads that either refuse to join or just attack the Imperium, or are mutated in some way and thus are destroyed by the Imperium. No human empire we encounter in the books wins. Most are defeated by less than one legion. A few are defeated without any legions at all, and some take detachments from a few legions working together to overcome, but no human empire we see in the books is anywhere near as militarily strong as the Imperium. We can't say the same for the aliens though. While the majority of alien species we see are overcome just as easily as the other humans, there are two major aggressive, expansionist alien species that are a genuine threat to the Imperium: the Orcs and the Rangda. The Orcs are a simple one. Pretty much as soon as the warp storms come down, the Orcs seem to be everywhere. They're the species the Imperium encounters most often across the galaxy, and it's not until the climactic fall of War-Urg at Ullanor, almost 200 years into the Crusade, that the Emperor finally thinks the Great Crusade is on the home stretch, and it's safe for him to go back to his lab and work on the Webway project. The Orcs are described in every way as being a major problem. The Rangda are a little bit more interesting. The Rangdan Empire was a Xenos empire in the Galactic Northeast that were a major threat to the Imperium in its first century. We don't know very much about them other than that they used horrific technology to enslave the populations of worlds they conquered, and that they were aggressive and expansionist. The Imperium fought three wars against them known as the Rangdan Xenocides, and they almost lost. Whole legions were lost fighting the Rangda.
Genocide.
And we know that the strongest legions of the early Crusade were reduced massively, almost under strength after it. Different legions became the primary ones after the Rangdan Xenocides. Interestingly, the Rangda are also described in similar ways to Enuncia or the Warp, as maybe just knowing about them's dangerous. The Space Wolves end up purging human worlds of the taint of the Rangda for decades afterwards. There is a fan theory I've seen around a bit that the Rangda were in fact a rival human empire that was way nicer than the Imperium, and then Primarchs defected to it because it was nicer, and that's actually why it was so dangerous. And the existence of that knowledge is what needed purging.
Like kinder?
There's nothing in the lore that actually supports
less
that.
Unfair
it's a fan theory.
and arbitrary.
The Rangda are not only described as kind of horrific and alien, they're also friends with aliens like
I
the
don't like that.
Sloth, who are
I don't like
horrific. So that sort of implies they're not a benevolent
I don't
empire.
like that.
Given what we know about all the different human enclaves that existed at the time, the Interrex, the Alambic Quietude, the Earth of 6319, it seems very clear that none of them would be a match for the Rangda or the Orcs of 30k, both of which are very clearly expanding. None of them can stand against the Imperium, and the Imperium barely wins against the Rangda. Maybe another human empire or great alliance might have arisen that could have united humanity, one that isn't as
not
bad
a
as the
single
Imperium.
alliance.
But again, we see no evidence of that actually happening. Most of the human enclaves that the Imperium encounters don't really even know the warp storms have stopped, or they don't have warp capability anyway, or they don't have the resources to do what the Imperium does. I think without the Imperium happening, the Rangda or the Orcs would have won. That process might have taken ages. The Imperium is still discovering lost human colonies in the 41st millennium, but without the Imperium or something equally powerful, it's reasonable to assume you'd eventually end up with an alien-dominated galaxy, with the scattered remnants of humanity existing isolated from each other and being slowly picked off over the next few millennia. We don't know what else might have happened, other things could have happened, but from the position of 30k, I think that is a reasonable assumption. Okay, so we know that.
So there is no world in which we all could just live in harmony, leave each other alone, ignore each other. Maybe not in harmony, but, alongside each other in harmony. Without the Imperium, the Eldar would have death with the Rangda, so with less collateral damage. Oh, yes. Tyrannid food. Right? We're not even getting into the Tyrannid yet. I'd argue it's less deception and more that the Emperor and Malkador were playing a game they couldn't control with too many moving parts, and that relied on a lot of emotional intelligence that seemed to be underrepresented. Oof. I think the Imperium would have done better if it had been ruled perhaps by a council of Primarch-like beings, far more human, far more flawed, but also more connected to the human experience. That's what I was thinking! Harmony is but a dream.
From the position of.
Dang, all this to just sell some plastic soldiers is crazy! Humans in the shadow of a faith-based autocracy. The Emperor's shadow makes a lot of sins possible. True. I don't think understanding the human experience has anything to do with good rulership. What? You don't? What are we ruling? Why are we ruling?
Of 30k, I think that is a reasonable assumption. Okay, so we know there were definitely some big alien empires that were very much a threat, but was the Emperor right to kill all the aliens? The general policy of the Imperium is that all Xenos must be wiped out to preserve the best chance for humanity. If humans are in charge of the galaxy with no competition, then they're free to concentrate on becoming a psychic species, essentially doing an Eldar without actually doing an Eldar.
Pulling an Eldar.
Is that correct? Okay, that one's a bit harder to answer. The majority of alien species in the galaxy of 40k or 30k seem to be quite innately hostile, and so they do constitute a threat. But then the Imperium definitely wipes out loads of Xenos species that either pose no threat or just want to be left alone, or ones that actually seem quite friendly, like the Kinnabrak, who are part of the Interrex. The Emperor's reasoning here is basically that aliens can't be trusted, at least not long term, and the thing is, we don't know if that's true or not. In both 40k and 30k, most of the Xenos species we hear about have a very good reason to be hostile to humans, because the humans want to kill them. But also, the few examples we do have of aliens working with each other also seems to be very unreliable. The Cabal of 30k fracture apart, and in 40k, the Tau are the closest example we have, and their empire has a definite, brainwashy second-class citizen vibe going on. In-world, the only people who have a perspective long enough to make a judgment on this, people who were around before the Age of Strife and witnessed humanity's long history with aliens, are some of the Perpetuals, like Erda and Ol. They might have an opinion, but they never mention it. Or the Emperor, whose opinion is that trusting aliens is a bad idea. We don't have another opinion to counter that with. But those questions come down to another choice the Emperor makes. Can the Imperium just not be nicer? Instead of a
Yeah!
conquering warlord, could the Emperor not have
Can't we be
stayed in
nice?
the shadows and manipulated things from behind the scenes, just like he had for thousands of years? You know, create a sort of benevolent space UN. When encountering non-hostile aliens, just ignore them, attack only when provoked, engage in diplomacy with humans who don't want to join, and then, if they really don't want to join, leave them be. Can't the Imperium seek to unite humanity, well, more nicely? Alright, back to practicalities here. It seems from descriptions that the Unification Wars, that Strife-era terror, with its horrific warlords, evil sorcerers, and gene-twisted ethnarchs, might not have been so receptive to a sort of democratic UN trying to unite it.
Fair.
The place frequently sounds like it belongs in Mad Max or Conan the Barbarian, and from all accounts, being the sort of warlord who could mass produce things like Thunder Warriors and lead giant fist-fighting armies as a figurehead was kind of the standard way of doing things in the Age of Strife. Alliances with those warlords seems a bit unlikely, at least in the time frame the Emperor is working with. But I guess that doesn't mean that united terror couldn't then have become a more diplomatic force once it spread into the galaxy. The question is, would that have provided the level of resources needed? We know that the Imperium...
The
that did happen,
resources.
the Emperor's
Someone mentioned
Imperium
this
was a
in the last
completely
video.
militaristic society that made its priority the folding in of any and all human-controlled resources, including military power and ancient weapons, as quickly as possible, and then use that to try and wipe out the Xenos. And as I just mentioned, even that was barely enough to win against some Xenos empires. I think it's probably fair to assume that if humanity had controlled less military power, fewer planets, or hadn't amassed its strength as quickly through, long negotiation of membership, or had a structure that allowed individual systems to vote on their involvement in a particular war, or choose not to commit all their forces to the crusade, well, then they would be in more danger of losing, right? And apart from the loss of resources, the other problem with letting human enclaves stay out is that they're dangers in and of themselves. The goal of all this is the psychic evolution of humanity, something that is gonna happen anyway.
It was Star Wars,
but without
okay.
some
I was
sort
like,
of guidance
I know
and
this.
control, risks humanity just doing an Eldar.
That's the count.
Their newfound psychic power getting so out of control, they end up getting eaten by demons and maybe forming another Eye of Terror. The Emperor's view is that even knowledge of the warp is potentially dangerous and corrupting, and so that knowledge has to be carefully controlled, and
Right.
very much operates on a need-to-know basis about that. Even the Primarchs are considered not important enough to be informed about it. They have one job, and it's real space conquest. Don't ask about the warp. And we know that most of that is true from the rest of 40k. We know the warp's dangerous, and that unchecked psychic power is dangerous, and that worshipping chaos and the warp, or having random rogue psychers, is a great way to eventually see your planet and any nearby planets getting eaten by demons. We know that chaos is corrupting, and people can be lured into worshipping it stage by stage without realizing what's happening. All those concepts are pretty well established in the setting, so the Emperor is right about them. And obviously, leaving human planets to decide if they want to be part of the Imperium is then a massive risk. Psychic instances are increasing, so that planet is an ever-increasing risk of doing their own Eldar and destroying whatever bits of the Imperium are nearby.
Risk
Now,
reduction.
we are given a couple of examples in the books that seem on the surface to contradict
Relapse
this.
prevention.
The Interrex are very aware of the warp, so much so that they leave one of the most powerful demon weapons in the setting in a museum, which suggests that, with the proper teaching about the warp, humans can see it more rationally as a dangerous thing that should be avoided. But the Interrex also have whole areas of their planets that seem to be demon-haunted caves where the rebellious locals still engage in their old folk beliefs, so it doesn't bloody work. Prospero was a planet of psychers who seem to be mostly plagued not by the Chaos Gods, but by other warp entities, Psychnoian. But while they have a much more holistic approach to the warp, they were still slowly being wiped out until the arrival of Magnus, who solved all their problems by being tricked into a bargain with Tzeentch. So that wasn't ideal either. And societies like the Wordbearers, home planet of Colchis, actively worship the Chaos Pantheon, but seem to be pretty stable for thousands of years. On the other hand, I don't think any of us would look at Colchis and the Wordbearers and assume there was no way they'd ever fall to chaos. We're given some examples about ways in which people deal with the warp differently, but none of them seem to be a foolproof long-term strategy for the evolution of humanity, especially as humanity gets more and more psychic. Now, if we're asking the question, was the Emperor correct? Was his plan actually necessary? Then I would say everything in the lore suggests the answer is yes. Given the events we witness in the books, if the Imperium hadn't existed, hadn't conquered Terra, hadn't unified as much military might, recovered as much technology, gathered as many resources as quickly as possible, then one of the other Xenos powers would have won. And that would put humanity in a very precarious position, especially regarding safely evolving it into a psychic species. And in order to achieve that, the Emperor needed to create super soldiers and super generals to lead them, and doing that required stealing power from the warp, which seems to have put the Emperor on an even more strict time limit regarding his ability to remain human. I don't think the lore gives us a way out. We know that the Emperor was always trying to speed up the development of humanity, at least that's what Erda says, but it seems pretty clear that the birth of Slaanesh and the fall of the Eldar and the sudden clearing of the warp storms kind of forced his hand. If he'd waited calmly on Earth for humanity to naturally re-establish itself, if he'd slowed down his plans in any way, there's a pretty good chance humanity would have been eaten by the Rangda or defeated by the Orcs, or that individual systems would do an Eldar and fall apart in psychic overload. And we should point out that even despite the Horus heresy, this plan does mostly work. Humanity does become the dominant force in the galaxy, fighting lots of wars, but not really existentially threatened by alien species for the next 10,000 years. Really existentially threatened by alien species for the next 10,000 years. It's only in the 41st millennium, when Tyranids and Necrons show up, and when Abaddon creates the Great Rift,
Tyranids
that
awake.
Any actual
the Necrons awake, the Tyranids come in.
To humanity. There's already a fair amount of speculation in this for one of my videos, but I think any other explanation involves even more speculation. I think the history of the Horus Heresy, all these books, basically confirm that the Emperor and Malkador were right to have a sense of urgency about this, and that humanity really was in danger of being destroyed if they didn't do their plans. Is that disappointing? Would we prefer it if the Emperor's plans were just wrong? If he's just an evil tyrant? I mean, that'd certainly make the morality of 40k simpler, right? The Emperor's evil. But I think that actually,
that's boring.
As well as it does, the Emperor's plans have to be correct. Usually, when people talk about how horrible the Emperor is, they mention the obvious things, right? He is an authoritarian tyrant. He's a dictator. He kills millions of humans and aliens in pursuit of his goals. He's also a liar, and he's often referred to as a hypocrite. He doesn't tell his subordinates, people like the Primarchs, the full truth about his plans. And in Valdor, during the Palace Coup, we see that the Lex Imperia, the law of the Imperium, seems not to apply to him or his mates. All of those things are definitely true. The Emperor is horrible. And we can compare that to our own history. Human history has a string of authoritarian dictators who initiated massive wars or murdered millions of people, all in the promise that what they were doing was 100% totally necessary, that once their grand, bloody plans had happened, everyone would be better off afterwards. Many of those dictators even believed what they were doing. They were sincere, at least at first. And millions of people died as a result of those grand plans, which then usually turned out to be wrong. Their plans did not make everything better at the end. The dictator and their immediate family usually ended up being really filthy rich and living a life of questionable luxury, while their people's lives got way worse. And it's tempting to just walk away from 40k with that as the lesson, right? Look what happens when you let an authoritarian dictator win. But of course, the Emperor's right. So we have to look at the other side too. Even when we think war is justified, the leaders and governments who do it still do many of those things, right? About the only war in recent history that most people would agree was justified was the Allied resistance to the Axis powers in World War II. But even the Allied powers restricted people's freedoms, conscripted them into armies, which were then marched into battle in the knowledge that many of them would die. They used propaganda, lied to their own population, they hid details of specific operations from their own side, even high-ranking members of their own side. They restricted information to those who needed to know. They instituted temporary draconian laws that sometimes didn't apply to people sufficiently senior. When we talk about wars, we accept that that stuff is sometimes necessary. It'd be childish to argue that fighting the Nazis was morally wrong because it involved lying to people, and lying is bad. Churchill was a bad dad, so you shouldn't support the war. That seems silly. Warhammer is a war game. Its background is about wars, and the Emperor's story mirrors the fundamental question we ask about wars in the real world. How much immorality is allowed to achieve something you think is moral? It's a trolley problem, right?
Not
Would you
the
do
trolley
an immoral thing if
problem.
the results were likely to save more people? All right then, how many would you do? Where's the line? What if it was only slightly likely to save more people? In order to create a narrative where that question exists, to create that grey area where interesting stories happen, you need a realistically achievable moral goal and a load of immoral actions you have to do to get there. And then you can weigh them up and find all your uncomfortable situations, the meat of the story. And the Emperor's plan in 40k is the realistic moral goal. If the Imperium weren't justified at all, if the Emperor was just lying or incorrect, just an evil tyrant who's wrong, I think the setting would be less interesting. On the flip side, if every single thing he did was justified, that'd be boring too. There are people out there whose reaction to trolley problems is just utilitarianism, or who treat fiction like membership of a sports team. I'm a human, so anything is justified if it means the fictional space humans win. That's also boring. That's a Saturday morning cartoon in terms of morals. In order to be interesting, the truth needs to be in this weird grey area in the middle. It's much more easier to see that when you look at the setting of Warhammer 40k. In 40k, the Imperium really does need to fight wars of survival. Millions of conscripted soldiers drafted to fight against swarms of Tyranids, exterminatus to stop demonic possession and warp rifts. We understand that the Imperium's battle for survival is sometimes needed, but we also understand that this has made the Imperium so hidebound and dogmatic that it also fights wars out of basically tradition or martial honor. It wastes millions of lives for no gain at all, or sacrifices planets because of inefficiency. And that one thing feeds the other. It's a world where you can have an honest Imperial character fighting for the survival of their friends, and evil tyrants slaughtering millions out of tradition, and the truth is like somewhere in the middle. Those grey areas are just slightly different when we're talking about the Great Crusade or the Horus Heresy. Do you really need your soldiers to wipe out every single Xenos like a frothing zealot just in case? What if imposing a blanket rule like that, while certainly efficient, means that your soldiers start to enjoy it? What if you need to create an army or a general so horrible and brutal that they can have no place in the empire you're building? Do you kill them afterwards? Is that justified? What happens when you can't actually tell people the real reason they're doing all these things, so they start to speculate and invent their own reasons or their own better ways of doing things? What happens if you can't tell them the truth? What happens when your plan cannot possibly be delayed to fix anything that goes wrong? Was the Emperor's plan correct? Well, according to everything we can see from the lore, broadly, yeah. His plan was a long shot. It didn't completely work out, thanks Horus, but it seems that without the Emperor doing what he did, humanity would be at considerably greater risk of being destroyed or of destroying itself. That is what the lore says. Does that mean it's morally right? Well, that's the same question we ask any time a war comes up. And the whole point of 40k is that you can't answer it. What's acceptable? How far is too far? These are questions raised constantly in the lore. The theme of many war narratives is to ask, at what cost? At what cost was winning achieved? Was it worth it? That question would be robbed of all its meaning if it turned out the goal was pointless all along. The Emperor's plans being right allows Warhammer to do that, to contrast the apparent requirement, the morality of that goal, with the reality of what had to be done to achieve it. And I think that horror, that tragedy, makes it a more interesting setting to tell all these stories in. Thanks for watching.
Yes. Because it is multifaceted and layered and contradictory, that's what makes it interesting. We need reasons to ponder it. Yeah, the gods don't make claims, they just bless. Bless up. I think Ian is old enough to remember Thatcher, though, that 40k is obviously a parody of fascism. I disagree, the Imperium is feudal theocracy. What is the Imperium? Thank you for watching the fish water in the chat. Again, dang, all this just to sell some plastic soldiers. Good or evil, the Emperor was a shit project manager. His idea may have been right, but the actions he took to get to the idea could have been consulted upon. The Emperor's plans being wrong doesn't invalidate anything. The fight is what the story is about, not the result. The dedication is the goal. I can definitely see where both feudal theocracy and fascism work into the world. I think it's just so layered and fantastical that it doesn't perfectly fit into these boxes. And I think also in creating the world and building the lore, there's probably pressure to further away from some of them, right? Like, they probably don't want to be like, I don't want him to be considered this way. Let us add this. Wasn't the Emperor like a child dude that lived by himself but only showed up when he was forced to?
I follow cute princesses just
No.
Tilda.
He either came out of nowhere or he was born out of hundreds of psychers. And he stepped up. He was a stepdad. The dad that stepped up. Angron do be done dirty. We need to learn more about the sun. I think after the Emperor's lore, we got to go into the suns. We still have one more video, guys. We started with Astartes Anonymous. We went to Arbiter Ian. And now the Remembrancer. The Emperor. Master of Mankind. This one's only a month old. 9 months. 10 months. This is the newest. What are you talking about? The Emperor has always existed. He's a god. He was born! What do you mean? He was born to farmers. Makes sense that it doesn't fit into our turns. But the human brain also makes sense to find similarities in what it knows. And in trying to create a fantastical world, both the creators and the consumers can't shy away from that. Nah, he's God. He was a baby. He was a child. He grew up. Thank you for the follows. I follow cute princesses and Random Geek. Welcome in. Get some water, guys. We have one last video to get through. We're understanding the Emperor. I think after this, we should go into the timeline more and then into the Primarchs. What do you think? The Remembrancer presents his videos like sermons from an Imperial historian. I think it's neat. He wasn't a god, yet people worshipped him regardless. And that also just builds onto him. The Emperor runs a Danny's off the shoulder of I-49. What's a Danny's? Does he have any airheads? I ran out. Okay, let us go to a sermon from an Imperial historian. History nerds, be ready. Have you seen the Amber King? So the Amber King was also really recommended to me. I think the Amber King needs his own video because he has really detailed videos. I should ask whether I should do an Amber King video or time, like what should be next. Because also, not only in the reactions, I'm trying to figure out like how to help my brain understand too. Because, you know, I'm reacting. What makes sense to understand more, just to gain better understanding? Would it be to stay on the Emperor for a little bit? Would it be to go into the timeline of the heresy to understand the Primarchs? Like, there's a lot of lore. There's a lot of things to get a grasp on, to just put our little fingers on. I'd say a timeline video. Yeah. So I think timeline video makes sense, and then more context and details. What's next is to play a 40k game. We're playing Space Marines too on Saturday. So yeah. Okay. Well, this is the last video for today's Emperor reaction. I'm getting comments about the timeline. If it were me, I'd start looking at 40k as it is, like many of the older fans is, where you see the consequences of the demigods and heroes and trace it back to half-remembered truth. Timeline should be good. What about Rogue Trader? Rogue Trader, oh, so I was between Space Marines 2 and Rogue Trader. Basically, I picked Space Marines 2 because it's a shorter playthrough. Siri, nobody's freaking asking you. And I do want to play Rogue Trader. I have it downloaded. It's ready to go. But it does seem to be a longer C word, a longer... So I feel like Space Marines would be easier to get through first and then go to Rogue Trader. Yeah. Big investment. Learn the Primarchs, then the Heresy, then the Xenos. Ooh. Time to learn about an interesting character instead, like Doom of the Melantai. Ooh. Big investment, but worth. I do want to do it. I do. I feel like Rogue Trader is up my alley. Prepare a profile pic you can upload for your character. Oh. It's 40k Baldur's Gate. Sounds perfect. I get to loot. I get to learn lore. Easy. 100+ hours. I'll get that. I'll get that. We'll get there. We'll get there. Okay. Emperor, take us home. The Remembrancer. I also like that I'm being exposed to different kind of creators and their content and what sticks to my brain more. Yeah.
I came back from that ship with him, of what remained of him.
Who is this?
We went as swiftly as we could. You will remember how it was. The world bending around us. The ship was the palace, then it wasn't, and we had to make our own way through it all. He could not speak. I believed he would die. I remember the despair of that. After all that had taken place, we were still going to lose it all.
Dawn fell silent. There was an awkward pause.
Who's Dawn?
But Archimus ventured.
Who's Archimus?
He did not die. Dawn looked up, roused from his memories.
I do not know. Truly, I do not know.
Me.
What came back with us? Was it him, even? I think so. A part of him, at the
Oh.
least. But his body was. It barely deserved the name. We took him to the throne. Even that was failing. The chamber was crawling with priests, screaming this and that. The roof was caving in. Some of it was on fire. Constantine was almost mad, I think. He couldn't speak. I wasn't much better. It fell to me, in the end, to carry him.
To carry him. And that saved him. A haunted look ran across Dawn's face.
It saved him. Or maybe not. He said one word to me as I took him to the seat. Now, I think he said. Or it might have been, no.
Oh.
What could I do? The portal below would open again. We all knew this. He was dying in my arms. He would have gone. No one, not even he, could have survived, I do not think. So I restored him to the seat. He looked at me for one last time, just one eye, in a ruin of a face. I thought there was terror in that look, in that eye, but that was it then. The priests swarmed up, pushed me aside. They had knives and tubes, and devices I have no name for. They were working faster than I had ever seen them work before. They were in a panic. I stumbled away. I looked at Constantine, but he barely knew me. Vulcan was there too. He might have kept things from collapsing altogether, though he was in a bad way too. We all were. Primarch, Astartes, mortal, united in pain. I have never felt the like.
But it worked, said Archimus, almost eagerly, anxious for confirmation of it. We are here. The palace is here. It must have worked.
It worked,
said Dawn, nodding weakly.
Something worked. The gate into madness remains shut. The dungeon has been stabilized. It will not collapse just yet. The custodians have taken control of the chamber. The priests tell me some wounds can be healed.
His fingers kneaded one another.
But it won't be as it was.
So, said Archimus, cautiously, does he speak yet? Does he command again?
Not yet. Constantine tells me his people no longer hear his voice either. It's worse than before, when we would go half-mad trying to guess his will. There's nothing now. Nothing at all.
But there will be. Dawn said nothing. It was probably Archimus's imagination, but a brief flicker of unease seemed to pass across those combat-beaten features, swiftly suppressed.
We have vengeance, though, he said grimly. We have that. They have hurt us. They have hurt him, but we can strike back now. This is what matters. They are fleeing, the ones who did this. Our duty, our only duty, is to see them all killed. They must never get back to their homeworlds, nor find any safe haven in the void. We must hunt them down, every one, and hand them the same measure of pain they dealt to us. I vowed this to him as I laid him on that throne,
that the crusade would be launched again, that everything he had ordained from the very start would be put in place again, bringing worlds to compliance, rearming the legions, driving all rebellion into the outer dark. Sigismund knows this. He's still fighting out there, you know that. I doubt I could call him back even if I wanted to. That's what we must rekindle. The anger.
Anger.
Humanity as we know it has been beset by malevolent forces since its rise to power. Each victory gained and expansion cemented, corroded by forces beyond the pale. Our glory sundered by aliens, traitors, and immaterial entities alike. Though humanity has prospered to heights unseen by its peers, each and every time its toil is turned to ash by bitter enemies. Yet in the darkest era known to our species, a single man rose to prominence. A figure of mythical proportions, united his people and conquered the known galaxy, coming close to achieving prosperity beyond any soul who had gone before. For today, we shall elucidate the linchpin of humanity, a ruler whose actions irrevocably changed the fate of existence as we know it, and ascended to the influence of a broken deity.
Irrevocably.
The undisputed master of mankind, the God Emperor. The boy rested a hand on the giant's chest plate, the fingers dark against the royal eagle. The boy's farm-worked palm, already rough despite his youth, ran along one golden wing. His expression was reflective, if not entirely serene. He didn't smile. The man that this boy would become never smiled either.
Oh. Never?
Though many speculate to know of the true origins of the master of mankind, much has been intentionally obfuscated with heresies, lies, and deceptions. His nature as a godlike entity, marred with speculation and inconsistencies. Some say this being to be a gestalt of mass reincarnation, enacted by Neolithic shamans of mankind's old earth. This prehistoric figure of a long-forgotten conglomeration of ancient Terra's forebears, known simply as the New Man. Others surmise him to be a weapon of even older design, a being crafted by the Xenos simply known as the Old Ones, to combat the nascent threat of chaos, which would rise from the settled dust cast by the war in heaven. All that can be categorically surmised from scant details available is that the being which would ascend as the god Emperor was born beside the Sakara River of central Anatolia during the 8th millennium BC. Perhaps the first human psyche to ever have been sired by mortal men, this being who would assume many years in his long life would remain undiminished by age, his mutation as an immortal of the perpetual breed, allowing him to bear witness to untold eras of humanity. Existing amongst humble farmers and animal herders in his infancy, as each of the pantheon of chaos grew in standing, so too did the Emperor of mankind, his powers as a manipulator of immaterial elements second to none. Tending the soil of the domains of the Nord-Afric war clan of a gold-clad chief known simply as Ra, the emergent emperor saw a vision of his biological father murdered by his uncle with a shard of sharpened bronze. Over time, the young emperor did meditate on the nature of rulership and power, attempting to replicate the face of his father's visage by smearing mud upon the flint skull of his primogenitor to mold his visage with knife or flint. The boy who would be king, presenting his toil to his uncle, and with a fragment of his power, inducing a myocardial infarction within his heart, the lack of blood, cleanly passing through its passages, cast him into the dirt, as the young emperor watched him perish impassively.
Rip. Got him.
Laying to rest his father, bartering with coastal traders for shells, which would shut his antecedent's eyes, the young boy left his tribe for pastures new, revealing his true name to no one, as he plied his trade with caution within the first city of humanity, likely Sumerian in Providence. By the age of 38, the master of mankind had learned much from his wanderings, witnessing history unfold around him, applying his knowledge when able to aid the management of primitive forms of government, horticulture, and technological innovation. Over the millennia, his occupation varied wildly, from advisor to king, messiah to fool, crusader to coward, and sorcerer to scholar, each time steering humanity toward prosperity, armed with foresight of its potential. His journey spanning the length and breadth of the known world as his species burgeoned. As humanity gave rise, so too did the forces of the primordial annihilator, beginning its insipid spread amongst his kindred. By the time of the Middle Ages, chaos had begun to influence the hearts and minds of men, the emperor-to-be aware of their nourishment from conflict, ambition, defiance, and self-gratification. Deeming the champion of humanity simply as the anathema, even before achieving true sapience. The pantheon of chaos, understood by their very nature, that what toiled upon Terra's soil was a threat to their existence, and thus marked him as their greatest foe. First of the pantheon to achieve wakeful ascension, Khorne influenced conflicts to spread, the blood gods feasting on martial bouts, and the carnage of war, a fitting bounty to sate its ravenous hunger for violence.
Big E
Next
built the
would be
Great Wall of
siege,
China because he was
entity of
bored.
scheming and plots,
Fair.
the political intrigue of empires and their rulers,
Siege.
seeing to assassinations, underhanded deals, and power struggles, a worthy offering to its majesty. Last of the three would be Nurgle, the maladies which beset the world of terror, rife during the Middle Ages, as plagues and poxes aplenty imbibed the Lord of Decay. The nascent emperor, allying with fellow perpetuals during his time as a warlord king, known as Nyaho. Among them, individuals such as the adoring geneticist, Erda, ancient soul of Nineveh, Olanius Person, compassionate Olivia Soreka, and the promising administrator, Malkador. Turning his attentions not to petty squabbles between rival warlords, but to the species' survival entire, the new man expanded his understanding of worlds beyond Terra's soil, resolving to defend humanity from its nemesis, given form from the depths of the Immaterium, not through conflict, but acts of peace.
Seems like he's basing a lot on 2nd edition lore. The shirtless emperor makes me understand why all who saw him instantly pledged loyalty. Goddamn. Wasn't he like 10 feet tall too? Brother, if someone 10 feet tall and like 100 years old is coming up to me, I'll be like, okay, whatever. I'm listening.
Sundering dangerous contraptions and arcane ritual sites, such as the Tower, made to herald the primordial language of creation,
Babel.
known by many names such as Glossolalia, Enuncia, and Babel. The Perpetuals could not allow humanity to change too drastically, using fell knowledge beyond its ken. Before long, human psychomutations became more prevalent, as too did the Perpetual breed. Their mastery of warp energies, synergizing with synthetic artifice, allowing these magisters to give rise to the era known as the Age of Technology by the 15th millennium. Humanity expanding its horizons, not only beyond old Earth,
Oh, he
but the
wasn't
expanse of
really
the solar
10
system
foot tall.
itself. As the fortunes of Xenos faltered, humanity filled the power vacuum left in their wake. Innovations aplenty, paving the path to a galaxy of untold human prosperity. For millennia, he watched within the margins, content to see the species make gains without direct oversight. Yet like all things in this fickle universe, humanity's golden age did come to ruin with the invention of advanced artificial intelligence during Old Night. Traveling alongside Sureka to the night world of Molech, having gleaned knowledge of an ancient warp gate leading directly to the realm of chaos. Though some speculate the Emperor struck a bargain with the Pantheon, others claim he stole power from their grasp, though none, not even his advisors, will ever know the truth of it.
Not even us, we'll never know.
Gifted immense power
I guess
and
we'll never
knowledge
know.
to create new demigods in his image. Nyaho in time would attempt to quell the primordial truth, which no creations of genetic science, merged with immaterial anomalies, could prevent. The Age of Strife had cast its pall by the 23rd millennium, and as men of iron and gold sundered humanity's vast galactic civilization, the Emperor's hope of an autonomous society of plenty turned to ashes in his mouth. Truly, such folly was inevitable without a North Star to guide mankind's actions.
A symbol.
Piling woe upon woe, the actions of the Eldari did bring into being a new member of the Pantheon, Slaanesh, the Lord of Excess, ensuring the extinction of the Children of the Stars, as its birth scream rent a tear in reality, further dismantling the ties between real space and the warp. The Eye of Terror now marked a bleak new era for mankind by the 29th millennium, its star-spanning civilization broken into fragments, separated by tumultuous warp storms, which none dared brave. Uncountable fiefdoms of humanity's glory cut off from one another, both in terms of communication but also travel. It did not take long for mankind to turn upon itself, with no figurehead to rally it in cause. And so it was that the Emperor determined that none could rule but he. Humanity left to its own devices,
gotta be me,
condemned to repeat
boys.
its perilous mistakes time and again, until nothing remained of its achievements. Only he could avert annihilation.
We need a great man.
He has
That's
been
me.
a king, of course, many times. A regal aspect has frequently been required. During the years of global unification, it was often necessary for him to manifest as a warlord, because humans respond to authority when they are frightened or confused. During the period of galactic reclamation, he was obliged to stride among the stars in the guise of a warrior king, armored in gold, for that was the version of him that his young sons best understood. He had to seem like them, yet more glorious, so he could command their loyalty, their respect, and their devotion. It was war, so he became warlike. They would not have followed him otherwise, or obeyed his instruction. They would have doubted. He needed to be able to command them to the very ends of the stars, to secure their obedience across unimaginable distances and sustain unswerving devotion even after he had left them. So he played that card, the Emperor. It was a version of himself that he found quite odious, but they rejoiced in it. They saw what they wanted to see. His sons committed utterly to the material war, and was so fortified and resolute that he felt he could leave the completion of the work to them, because he had to return. Time has never been his ally. He had to leave his children to conclude the material war amongst the stars and return to his seat underground, for the immaterial war had to be fought simultaneously. One victory was nothing without the other. Humanity's golden age.
Right. It's thought that he betrayed them somehow because they call him anathema. They could have called him that as a lie. Every act to end where they knew they would go because they were already there. To be honest, if the Emperor told you everything he's done, you'd probably, like, literally go crazy. I think we're all good not knowing what he did on that gate of Moloch. Yep, I don't want to know how he did it. I don't need to know how the sausage is made. I don't need to be in the room where it happened. You know how many times I had to stop myself from singing Hamilton? There's just so much Hamilton in this.
It had been tarnished beyond measure, its resources scattered and governing bodies crumbling under the weight of soul-crushing losses, wrought by the betrayal of its own mechanical creations. Staving off all technologies which lacked the oversight of human minds, mankind evolved into a barbaric rabble. The mistrust given rise following the dark age of technology, galvanizing the ignorance of the masses. Unwilling to watch his species descend into one ruled by superstition, ignorance, and cruelty, the nascent Emperor emerged to take control of the power vacuum which was left in the wake of the Age of Strife. Conquering warring techno-barbarian tribes, which had seized swathes of Terran civilization, the Emperor cultivated new breeds of warriors through genetic tampering and technological mastery in order to achieve his ambitions. First were those of his companions, superhuman demigods who would excel not only as warriors, but also intellectuals with whom the Emperor could find fellowship. Next were those of the Thunder Legions, immense brutes forged to kill and be killed until their usefulness was done. The intentional failsafe of deadly cancers imprinted into their very genetic code, ensuring their volatile nature would not outlast their deeds. The churches of old superstitions set ablaze to make way for a new age of logic and cold surety. The old would be torn down to begin a new age of plenty, free from the shackles of credulity. By 712.M30, Terra had been secured.
What the hell is 712.M30?
Ensuring total submission of the rebellious elements of humanity, whilst the Emperor's vast arsenal of weapons and technologies were bolstered, once bringing such bested foes into the fold of the burgeoning Imperium. The advancements of the Emperor's glory most visibly obvious in the garb of his custodians. From simple leather armor to glistening auramite panoplies, this towering golden host in time called the Thunder Legions to pave way for the next stage of the Emperor's designs. Establishing the Treaty of Olympus Mons, which brought the Martians of Sol into alliance with the Imperium. By 739.M30, the Imperium of Man formally established itself as the governance of humanity under the rule of the Emperor.
30th millennium.
Though Terra had been secured, in order to conquer the galaxy, generals of immense fortitude, intelligence, and ruthlessness would be required. Souls capable of overseeing centuries of conflict without enduring the harrying of age or diminished cognitive acuity. Thus was the Primarch Project established, an experiment combining the secrets gleaned from the ruinous powers upon Molech and biotechnical expertise of humanity's most revered scientists. Amara Astarte, the foremost geneticist of her era, outpacing even the innovations of the Selenar cults of Luna. After many attempts to create such Primarchs ended in horrific failures, unable to contain the essence of the warp, the Emperor took matters into his own hands. Forging these generals from his own genetic materials, each so-called son of the Emperor would be nurtured within gene-culturing chambers by their surrogate mother, Urda the Perpetual. 21
Urda was their mother!
To maturity, the conglomerations of dark secrets and once forbidden
21?
technologies, crafting beings which would transcend the bounds of mortal men. Their genetic materials the fulcrum to which a new breed of warriors would be crafted in their image.
21? I thought they were 2018. Okay, the 30th millennium and the year 712 makes sense. I was like, it's only been 700 years? What? Nah, it's been 30,700.
Cultivating organs known as gene seed, which would be implanted in their warriors to sow elements of their grandeur into their bodies. Sons would beget sons, bred only to kill, until killed by the horrors of the Outer Dark. Developing this new breed of soldier in coalition with the Adepts of Mars, which would surpass their brutish forebears. As the Unification Wars drew to a close, these so-called Angels of Death marched as slate grey enforcers of his will.
One of them were twins?
The Battle of Mount Ararat of the Kingdom of Aratu, said to be the final major conflict of the Unification Wars. Centuries of bloodshed gave way to a new era of secular ideals and expansion. With the bears of the Thunder Legions purged by the wolves of the Astartes, new war zones beckoned across the stars. The lost remnants of humanity's once glorious star-spanning civilization, now isolated
The
from one
wolves
another,
of the
with no
Astartes.
leadership to combine.
Does Dune reference Warhammer with the Astartes? And the wolves? No, I'm thinking of Trades. Don't listen to me!
Their resources.
Don't listen to me!
Yet as the Emperor ready to enact his great crusade to unite the stars, his sons would be spirited
Did you forget
from his
the
grasp
twins?
during 972.M30. The meddling of their
Warhammer references Dune if we're going by chronology. Oh. Heard.
mother, Erda, and the ruinous powers, scattering their newborn forms through the warp to far distant worlds to live isolated from their father's influence. The forces of chaos, emboldened by the folly of the fall of the Eldari, the rent in real space known as the Eye of Terror, signaled to the Emperor that the race for the soul of humanity had begun. The Space Marine legions, readying to deployment strength despite lacking the generals made to lead them. As humanity embarked from the Sol system during 798.M30, such angels quelled horrors too unspeakable to countenance, bringing worlds into compliance, thankful of their emancipation. Yet not all worlds bent the knee willingly, and thus required a firmer hand. The Emperor unwilling to compromise on his ideals, knowing the true threat which likewise grew in strength from beyond the Pale. Leading his armies personally, clad in a panoply known as the One True Armor, its gilded auramite splendor, though gaudy in its finery, enshrined the Emperor's form in the image of the ultimate conqueror.
Dune is to sci-fi what Lord of the Rings is to fantasy. Oh, 40k pulls a lot from Dune. Oh, I'm not crazy. I just don't know the difference between Astartes and Atreides. Ha! I'm a genius.
His weapon of choice, known simply as the Emperor's Sword, ablaze with immaterial fire, in time leached a fragment of his psychic presence into its edge, allowing it to not only blaze eternal at the whim of its user, but also ensure the soul death of any who tasted its bite. Other artifacts, such as the Emperor's Shield and Lightning Claw, standing this paragon of war in good stead. Such was his splendor in battle, that none among humanity dared to fathom betraying his cause, nor abandoning their duty to fight in his name.
Fair. Scary
In time,
looking.
the sons of the Emperor would be found, the first officially recorded amongst them, Horus Lupercal, upon the mining world of Cavonia. His tutoring by the Emperor,
He was in the
instilling
mines.
ambition, pride,
He
and
earned.
grandeur into his form, as for a time, the lone scion of the master of mankind. Yet in time,
Lone
others
scion.
would be found. Leman of the Rus, Ferus the Gorgon, Fulgrim the Phoenician, Vulcan the Drakelord, the Praetorian Rogel Dawn, Gilliman of Ultramar, Magnus the Crimson King, the Great Angel Sanguinius, the Lion of Caliban, Perturabo the Hammer of Olympia, the Pale King Mortarion, Lorgar the Rainmaker, Jagatai the Great Kargan, the Night Haunter Conrad Kurz, Angronius of the Red Sands, Korax the Liberator, and Alfarius the Serpent. Two Primarch's deeds would be redacted from history, their endeavor made during the Great Crusade too heinous to recount, with many speculating as to the crimes commit against their father's conquest.
That's why we
Each
X'd
legion
them.
now remade in the image of their Primarch, hastening the conclusion of the Emperor's conquest, as the largest greenskin empire ever encountered fled to their bastion
Wait,
of
so
Ulanor.
one of them was twins, but they weren't twins anymore? What happened? They put them together? What? How are they not twins anymore? Or we just killed one? There were twins, but only one lived.
The Emperor and his most cherished son laid low the last great enemy of humanity. Horus Lupercal, saving the life of his father during combat made against the Orc warlord Erlak Erg, as its body fell from atop the spires of Ulanor to crash in bloody spectacle amongst its thralls below. The Lupercal had proven himself to be the first amongst his equals. Ascending to the position of War Master of the Imperium, a title never before entrusted to a son of the Emperor, Horus would lead the Great Crusade in his father's stead, as pressingly urgent matters called for his attention. Humanity now held
He
total
trusted
dominion
you,
of the stars,
Horus?
yet much work had to be done to ensure its safety. For whilst Xenos threats have been culled the galaxy over, the presence of chaos stirred.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Where you stand now, the Emperor said, is the present. Do you see the top of the cliff? Of course, sire. That is the future. You see it. You know what it is. Now reach it. Ra hesitated. Now? Now. Climb, custodian. You question the nature of my foresight. I am granting you an answer. Ra moved to the rock face, looking over the stone. Finding his first grips, he tested them, finding them strong, even against the weight of his armor. The weaker ones he avoided. Less than 10 heartbeats had passed when a rock cracked and crumbled in his gauntleted hand. Ra skidded, arresting his fall by clutching at the stone. Another gave way, sending him the last few meters to the rocky ground in a breathy cloud of white dust. You looked for places to safely grip, said the Emperor. Yet you have already stumbled. You did not know the stone was weak. It looks strong. The Emperor smiled, and it was by far the most unpleasant sight Ra had ever witnessed.
I thought he
Emotion
never
painted
smiled.
Across a human face, as false as the grotesques at any masquerade.
Oh, it wasn't
Yes,
real.
it did.
Okay.
And you only learned the truth too late. Now climb. Ra hesitated once more, a hesitation that bordered upon defiance, as if such an action were even possible for one such as he in the presence of his master. It is not necessary, sire. I believe I understand now. Do you? Look out across the water, Ra.
Bro,
Ra
you
returned
understand
to the
when he
Emperor's
said you
side
understand.
And did as he was bid. The water rippled in sedate waves, sloshing around the rocks that lined the shore. At the horizon's very edge, he could see the mirroring lip of another landmass. An island, perhaps. It is Albia, many thousands of years ago, but that is unimportant. You see the shore. You know it is there. You know you could reach it by ship, or by swimming, or by flight. That is what you know. The Emperor's dark eyes lost their focus. He faced towards the distant shore, but Ra doubted he was still seeing it. So you journey towards it, but all you see is your destination. You cannot see the beasts below the water that devour travelers. You cannot know if the wind will blow and throw you aside from your course. And if the wind does blow, will it send you east, west, north, south? Will it shatter your craft completely? Perhaps there are rocks beneath the water, impossible to see until they grind and tear at the hull of your ship. Perhaps the inhabitants of that far shore will fire upon your craft before you can make landfall. The Emperor turned back to Ra, though curiously, his eyes didn't clear. But you can see the shore, Ra. Did you fail to predict any of those possible flaws between here and there? Perhaps I predicted them all, sire. Perhaps I factored in the possibilities of each one occurring. Maybe so. And what of the eventualities you could not predict? Each passing moment is rich with 100,000 possible pathways. The craftswoman making your boat may suffer a heart failure before she can gift it to you. Or she decides not to offer you the boat at all. You say the wrong words to her. You offer the wrong currency. She lies to you, for she is a thief. An enemy sabotages your boat before you set sail. You reach halfway across this channel of water, only to see a more appealing coast to the east or west. Minute after minute, possibility upon possibility, path after path. All variables you are unable to see from where you stand at this moment. The Emperor reached out, as if he could crush the coast in his golden gauntlet. His expression was cold in its pale ferocity. I can see the coast, Ra. I know what awaits me there. But I cannot see all the infinite vicissitudes between here and there. At last, he lowered his hand. That is foresight, Ra. To know 1 trillion possible futures, and to be left to guess at the infinite ways of arriving at each one. To map out even one possible eventuality, taking into account every decision that every living being will make that will impact upon the others around it, would take all of the lifetimes I have already lived. The only way to know anything for certain, he trailed off, gesturing to the distant shore, is to reach the other side, said Ra. The Emperor nodded. When the vault was attacked and the Primarch project compromised, should I have destroyed them all? Or do as I did, and trust that I would be able to restore them to grandeur? If I had destroyed them to prevent their abduction, would the Imperium have risen, as it has now done? Or would the Great Crusade have stuttered and failed without its generals? There are no answers yet, Ra. We are in the middle of the sea, beset by strange tides and unexpected beasts, but not yet thrown off course. Though the Emperor's sons had ensured the conquest of the galaxy, it was by no means without cost, many of his creations harboring resentment and outright contempt for the sufferings inflicted by his actions upon them. Foremost of which would be the Urizen, Lorgar the Rainmaker, Lorgar the Fool, Lorgar the True. His own reverence of his father's image in early years, nothing short of apocryphal in an age of secular enlightenment. Slow in his compliance of worlds, as each painstakingly built monuments to the Emperor's glory. Upon the world of Kerr, Lorgar's greatest sin, Monarchia, the perfect city, stood as an affront to every ideal the Emperor held. The Ultramarines ordered asunder Monarchia's edifice in the name of the Emperor. This chastisement of a naive son would prove the catalyst for chaos to infect humanity. Aurelian's conniving advisors, Cor Pharaon and Erebus, already under the sway of chaos, manipulating their lord to do their bidding. For over 4 decades, the word...
The metaphor of foresight is very interesting, right? I was like, thinking, this could be a monologue. He's talking to himself, but he said he already thought of everything, and he just needs to get there. He's already thought of it, but also there are things he'll never think of, and he's just still trying to get there. All my homies hate Lorgar. So again, the idea of secular enlightenment is amusing to me. The French tried this during the Revolution, the cult of reason. It didn't pan out.
Bearers plotted to usurp the throne, orchestrating events which would influence Lorgar's most insecure and volatile brethren to betray their oaths to the Emperor.
Insecure.
Failing to recognize their own misdeeds in adding to the miseries which befell them, each traitor Primarch in the making fell to the vices amplified by their demigod nature: pride, bitterness, arrogance, and resentment. The master of mankind, toiling to separate humanity from the influence of chaos, with his next great deed securing the Eldari webway network. Should he manage to wrestle its control from the Xenos, his species would use such tunnels to circumvent the warp, unimpeded, and shelter within from reprisal if necessary. Spending each waking hour harnessing the salvaged artifacts of unknown progeny, which would form the basis for the construction of the Golden Throne. This amalgam of human and Eldar technologies would in time fuse into a monstrously ravenous device. Though humanity had studied similar devices of the Dark Age of technology, such as the Dark Glass, to aid in its adaptations, only a powerful Psyker in the extreme could cultivate its power fully, with none save for the most ancient species understanding the true complexities of many of its intermingled parts. Setting ablaze the navigational light of the Astronomicon safely for many years, thanks to the barrier of finely tuned psychic wards which surrounded its tether to the Golden Throne. Should humanity wean itself off the Immaterium, chaos would be starved out forevermore. Ruling that the Space Marine Legions and Mortal Auxilia must end their use of psychic powers completely during the Council of Nicaea of 001.M31. With the dawn of the new millennium, the so-called Trial of the Thousand Suns incurred an exploitable grudge from another of his sons. Magnus the Red, Primarch of the 15th Legion and Master of Arcana second only to his father's majesty, was convicted in the eyes of his peers as a pariah. His sorceries declared too dangerous to be controlled, and thus outlawed with exception to only the most crucial mortal support auxiliaries, such as navigators and astropaths. As resentment festered within the heart of Magnus, doubt blossomed within the Lupercal, his position as War Master a burden which even he found too heavy to carry as the Great Crusade waged on. Humanity now had undisputed dominion of the stars, and yet Horus felt a pang of doubt for his own accomplishments, his brothers jostling for position under his purview, as all began to grow restless, not knowing why the Emperor had withdrawn to Terra. Kept ignorant of the true nature of chaos by their father, perhaps it was inevitable that many would fall to its thrall. The allure of vengeance for past injustices, a balm too reassuring to reject. And thus upon the world of Darwin did the seeds of heresy bloom. The injury incurred by Horus at the hands of the possessed planetary governor, Eugen Temba, inflicting an unnatural wound which none could heal. Taken to the shamans of the Serpent Lodge at the behest of Erebus, out of desperation, the sons of Horus sealed their master's fate as a slave to darkness, as the ruinous pantheon subsumed his very soul to their will. Empowering his form with their very undiluted essence, the horrific being would not be the first, nor only thrall to their will. Lorgar Aurelian already allied to their cause for decades, as others such as Fulgrim were more overtly corrupted by their agents. As Magnus the Red conducted sorceries in secret as he roamed the great ocean, the Crimson King witnessed the corruption of Horus. His attempts to stay him from the path of damnation doomed to fail within the domains of the Ruinous Four. Once more flagrantly ignoring the commandments of his father, Magnus made all haste for the throne world, his psychic projection arriving outside the threshold of the throne room, guarding from interference from the warp.
Okay.
Breaking through the wards and protections in order to warn the Emperor of Horus's fall to chaos, Magnus had forever damned humanity to be hounded by his benefactors, having ruined all hope of securing the webway.
Oh, no.
The Master of Mankind sealing the breach, which spilled forth malevolent entities as best as he was able. Though the Imperial Palace would remain intact, demonic hordes now infested the webway network.
He didn't have a cell phone. Didn't have a carrier pigeon. He's a psyker. Magnus couldn't have projected some kind of thought. Come on. Come on. That's just wrong. Warp travel doesn't matter. Humanity's souls are still in the warp. Emotion is still felt. The gods can't not be fed. And if not now, then in the future or the past. Right? I don't think you can starve out chaos. Maybe, like, emaciate them. What's it called when vampires need blood? Is it emaciated? Magnus could just stare into the warp for enchantment. I don't know, he couldn't freaking text him, call him, beep him if he wants to reach him. You can and you can't.
Unknowingly enacting the beginnings of the war within the webway, which would compound the impending civil war to come. The Emperor would not hear Magnus's excuses, having irrevocably ruined his plans for a prosperous future. For while Lorgar had orchestrated the heresy to come, with Horus acting as the role of would-be king, it would be Magnus who had made the gravest error.
True.
His rash actions, though of good intention, nonetheless aiding the schemes of chaos and their millennia of feasting upon humanity's very soul. Mankind's fate was forever sealed henceforth as the plaything of the ruinous pantheon.
So if Magnus had come in and told Daddy that Horus was coming, would Horus not have disrupted all of that? Or was Horus not powerful enough to do that? Not at the seeming urgency Magnus felt, which again I'd argue is a failure of the Emperor's management style. If he knew his sons on a personal level, he should have anticipated how they would react. True. The warp shields around Terra made by E made Magnus unable to mind message him. Oh. So he got power from Tzeentch to break it, not knowing why it was there in the first place. Oh. Yeah. So I see what you're saying. If the Emperor had just allowed Magnus that in the first place, or if he had foreseen how his sons would react, this wouldn't have happened. I told him nothing, so Magnus made a decision based on the information he had with the upbringing he had, but it's totally his fault. Dang it, Magnus!
The only question which remained, being how slow its inevitable extinction would be.
Speak, you hiss. Speak, father. Say something. Say something relevant. Say something that
Say
actually
something
matters.
relevant, damn.
Tell me you're sorry for withholding the truth from us. Tell me you're sorry for causing this war. Say something. Show me something. Kneel. At least you can do that. Kneel and submit.
Oh, I don't know about kneeling and submitting, though.
You're going to have to kill him. You suspected you might have to. You thought you'd be sorry if it came to it. But you're not sorry. Not at all. He hasn't changed. If anything, he's worse. Just staring at you with those expressionless eyes. No, not at you. He's not staring at you. This whole time, he hasn't been looking at you at all. And nothing he's said since he walked into your court has been directed at you either. It's as if you're not even there. He's looking past you. He's looking into the shadows behind you. You turn to see what's so damn fascinating that he can't take his eyes off it for long enough to pay you the respect that is due. And there they are, of course. You knew they were there. You just didn't know anybody else could see them. Lurking there in the shadows, in the psychofractal darkness that simmers behind you. The old four.
Oh.
All of them. You've never seen them so close. You've never seen them manifest so completely. They are huge.
They're huge.
So beautiful. They've come to witness this moment. Your father has been talking to them, watching them. When he said, "You have killed my son," the fool hadn't meant Sanguinius. He had been talking to them about you. He considers you dead. Dead and lost. He's not interested in you at all.
Well, already dead.
You should be.
Oh, Horus, you're already dead. Rip. The entire reason the gods used Magnus was because they couldn't do it himself and Horus was too far and also not a powerful enough psyker to break it at the time. Magnus should have been on Terra helping with the gate in the first place. That was his goal. That was his place. The Emperor should have told him. Yeah, he should have known. Communication. This is when they finally meet. Oh, this is when they meet.
Now unable to leave the confines of the throne room, lest the breach in real space rupture and devour the Imperial Palace from within. The Master of Mankind was now unable to confront his usurper personally. His distance from the throne world too great, and with no viable psyker to replace him upon the goal.
So I know Magnus made a big boo-boo, but why couldn't he sit on the throne instead of Malkador? Did he die? Where'd he go? What happened after Magnus's boo-boo?
Golden Throne. The Space Wolves Legion, departing for Prospero to bring retribution to the Thousand Suns, alongside a considerable contingent of the Sisters of Silence and Golden Host. No sooner had Prospero been burned to ashes, that word reached
he
the
was a
Emperor
traitor.
of the War Master's perfidy. Receiving word of the defection of the sons of Horus, Emperor's children, World Eater.
But he's also a tool. He was forced to run because the Emperor sent Russ to kill him. Oh. Because Tzeentch was the one who told him to go break in. So he had already been compromised. So he couldn't be trusted anymore. Yeah, all Primarchs are tools. Exactly. We know he's a tool. So you use him. But he can't be used because he was compromised. That's it. That's the part. Okay. He was still across the galaxy on his homeworld. He projected his consciousness to Terra. Oh, he wasn't even there. He wasn't even there. I didn't know he was like on a different world. I thought he was just like outside of Terra, like, you know, Mars maybe. Okay, he was far away. He was
and
far
Death Guard
away.
legions. Reports of the traitors' purge of their loyalist elements within the Istvan system were carried forth by the escaped vessel, the Eisenstein, and their leader, Nathaniel Garrow. The Imperium's survival would thus lay on the shoulders of his sons, the Primarchs. His foremost Praetorian, Rogul Dawn, mustering resources to prepare the Sol System's defenses as a task force embarked to bring Horus to justice. 8 legions would be sent forth to crush the rebellion in its infancy. The Iron Hands, Salamanders, Raven Guard, and Imperial Fists to enact the first wave. The Iron Warriors, Night Lords, Word Bearers, and Alpha Legion, delivering the hammer blow of second wave reinforcements. Overall command of the Istvan offensive given to Primarch Ferrus Manus, as among the first found sons of the Emperor. None could deny the Taskmaster of the Iron Temp's effectiveness as a war leader, nor deny him vengeance for his own dealing with the Phoenician. Though the Imperial Fist contingent would be cast off course, the first wave of counterattack arrived within the Istvan system.
To be fair, the Emperor told Horus to bring Magnus to Terra, but Horus told Russ to kill him instead of capture. The Emperor sent Russ to bring Magnus to Terra, but Horus intercepted the orders and changed them to kill because Horus had been corrupted by chaos, but hasn't publicly denounced the Emperor yet. He was compromised from day one. Magnus had 2 eyes when he was born. Him having 1 eye to see all was already a gift from Tzeentch. Tzeentch made him who the Emperor needed. Oh, not only did they scatter the suns, they also implanted their little control onto them too. Okay, that would be a good thing to do. He refuses to offer because Big E says that in order for him to be back on the Imperium side, he had to let go of his sons as they were too corrupted. He is offered a new legion, but he couldn't do it. Oh. Dorn has probably understood and accepted his role, but all Primarchs are very flawed characters, which does make them interesting characters. Some of them. Flawed sons of the flawed father. The flawed apple doesn't fall far from the flawed tree.
The Loyalists unleashing their wrath upon the rebels until support arrived to aid their advance. Yet as the second wave descended, their guns would turn on the Loyalists. 8 legions of Astartes, now pledging their allegiance to the War Master's cause in an act of betrayal not seen in human history. The Horus heresy had begun in earnest, countless worlds erupting into bloody violence as 7 years of conflict set the stars ablaze.
7 years.
The reincorporated bastion of humanity's golden age, torn asunder from the Imperium, piece by piece. With Magnus's escape from the flames of Prospero, so too did his legion aid the War Master's cause. Their allies of the Dark Mechanicum and demons of the Immaterium, bolstering their war machine's inexorable advance towards the Throne World. The largest of legions, the Ultramarines, Blood Angels, and Dark Angels, cast adrift far from the conflict's most crucial war zones. No sooner had the Civil War begun than 3 legions, the Iron Hands, Salamanders, and Raven Guard, had been shattered within its opening stages. Billions wept for Ferrus the Martyr upon Terra, as hopeless souls threw themselves from the spires of Terra's vast domains. The notion of the Emperor's sons turning on one another, unthinkable.
Unthinkable.
Each attempt by Malcador the Sigillite to assassinate Horus ending in failure. The forces deployed to combat the breach in the webway fared little better, as demonic entities hurled themselves towards the breach of the palace's inner chamber. The companions of the Emperor perishing within the Immaterium, as Null Maidens likewise sacrificed their lives to vanguard humanity. As the traitors edged ever closer to Terra, the Master of Mankind knew that without his personal intervention, all would be lost. Timing his involvement to quell the war within the webway only when the time was right. Though none save for Magnus could survive the ravages of the Golden Throne, his Sigillite might survive long enough to buy time. Observing the birth of the fell entity known as Drachnien within the warp, the Emperor knew the time had come to intervene, tasking the Silent Sisterhood to gather 1,000 psychically gifted souls to maintain his vigil for a single day as he strode out to combat this new foe. Entrusting the Primarch of the Raven Guard, Corvus Corax, with the secrets and technologies of the Primarch Project, as well as insight of the true nature of chaos. Should such insight be stolen by the War Master, doubtless the Space Marine Civil War would end in utter devastation.
It makes sense why he didn't trust some of his sons, because they're compromised. So he's trusting Corvus over here. Magnus was too human to see his sons as tools like his father did to him. Oh, Magnus. Sweet Magnus. Reminder, the traitors got buffed by Chaos and had demons as allies and still got clapped in 10,000 years of failures. Chaos worshippers are whiny little B-words before manly men wearing flak and las guns. Oh.
Charging into the corrupted webway,
that's the demon that became
blazing
Abaddon's
in hand,
sword. Oh.
The Emperor confronted Drachnien, the coalescence of the first murder committed by humanity, proving a foe powerful enough to wound the Master of Mankind. Sealing the demon within the form of a living blade, unable to banish nor destroy its form. The Emperor hurled its edge into the chest of among his greatest companions, Ra Endymion, ordering him to run as far as he could to put distance between the entity and humanity.
Oh, his friend!
Venturing forth without a moment's
Ra
hesitation,
never saw the
Endymion
shore!
ran, the Emperor sealing the webway portal behind him before returning to his vigil atop the Golden Throne, foreseeing a vision that soon the ultimate battle for humanity's soul would soon begin. Awaiting the arrival of Horus Lupercal, as the traitor forces began the devastating siege of Terra.
Just curious, has the Emperor ever not done something that he has foreseen? If he foresaw something, has he ever not did it? And what were the consequences? Which is proof that 40k is a better setting when man kills their gods. Imperial Cope, the Long War is supposed to be Ethernom. You can't have that if you win. He sees the destination. Foresight is a trap. It's all a trap!
The Imperial Palace held, thanks to the efforts of brave souls of the Imperial Fists.
We
White
never
Star,
saw your death and got it
Blood
confirmed, but
Angels,
rip.
Knights Errant, and untold mortal exilia. Confiding in his custodian prefect, Diocletian Koros, that the Imperium of Man was doomed henceforth. Despite knowing the calamity that would inevitably befall his species, the Emperor refused to surrender, nor submit to the ruinous powers. Whether a year or 10 millennia in the making, mankind would fall. The Emperor, for the first time in his conquests, unable to comprehend a single means to prevent its extinction, nor compromises which would ensure its survival.
Ooh.
After months
No
of
destination.
siege, the traitors invaded the Imperial Palace. The efforts of Magnus the Red to dethrone the Emperor from his mantle, denied by the valor of Vulcan of Nocturne. His brothers Jagatai,
Magnus really went in.
and Rogel Dawn, bleeding in turn beyond the palace walls, as reinforcements from the Void made all haste to aid
He
their
really
plight.
went in.
Yet none could prevent the clash between the Emperor and his misbegotten son, only forestall it. 7 years of bloodshed paving the way for the Lupercal's last gambit aboard the vengeful spirit. lowering the void shields of his flagship to goad the Emperor to act. The Loyalists rallied for one final assault, as Malkador the hero bought time for their advance at the cost of his own life, as the Golden Throne tore his body and soul apart. Within the Lupercal's court, the Great Angel did battle. His brother Rogul Dawn and the Emperor separated due to the machinations of the warp, the Imperial Palace and Vengeful Spirit fusing into a maddening amalgam of the two, as time and space warped around them.
Amalgamation. Him letting Sanguinius on the Vengeful Spirit is something he didn't see, and also Magnus bombing the website project he didn't see either. He was very shocked and hurt by it. Oh, he's hurt. He didn't foresee, but when he killed the last church, the pastor told him humanity needed to believe in something as their nature, and his atheism would blow up in his face. True. You should see Sanguinius' speech on the Siege of Terra. Was so beautiful. We'll get into it
Horus delighting
after
in
the
slaughter of
timeline.
Sanguinius as he tore his wings asunder and strung up his body as a fell omen upon the walls of his chamber. At the decisive final battle, 3 men stood: the Emperor, Custodian Proconsul, Sekaltus Dusk, and the last of the Lunar Wolves, Garviel Loken. Dusk slain by the War Master as the trio attempted to overwhelm him. The Custodian's sacrifice nonetheless bought the Emperor time in his attempts to confuse and outmaneuver the War Master. His assuming of the form of Loken, allowing him to slay the Lupercal and unleash his psychic power to scar Horus's soul from existence itself. The edge of an Aphame dagger, severing Horus's connection to the Pantheon of Chaos, as their immaterial forms incurred a wound which came close to banishing them once and for all from existence.
Oh.
By the end of the fighting, Garviel beheld the ravaged form of the Emperor. Having lost one eye, several organs, his arm, and a mortal wound scoring a hole through his chest. As the warp abated, Rogul Dawn found upon his father's body at the brink of death. Having won the battle for humanity's soul, such a bout was nonetheless a Pyrrhic victory. Dawn carrying his father's body to the confines of the Imperial Palace dungeon in order to inter him forevermore upon the Golden Throne. Having no other choice with Malkador's essence extinguished and the portal to the warp still
Rip
present within
Malkador.
the heart of the Imperial Palace, herein would the Emperor remain immobile for 10,000 years, upholding his duty to close shut the gates to the realm of chaos.
It is a dangerous road you travel,
said Uriah.
Oh, here he is. Here he comes.
Humanity a thing will only make them crave it all the more. And if you succeed in this grand vision of yours, what then? Beware that your subjects do not begin to see you as a god.
Uriah looked into the Emperor's
beware.
face as he spoke, now seeing past the glamours and the magnificence to the heart of an individual who had lived 1,000 lives and walked the earth for longer than he could have imagined. He saw the ruthless ambition and the molten core of violence at the Emperor's heart. In that instant, Uriah knew he wanted nothing to do with anything this man had to offer, no matter how noble or lofty his ambitions might be.
I hope in time of all that is holy you are right,
said Uriah.
but I dread the future you are forging for humanity.
I wish only the best for my people, promised the Emperor.
I think you do, but I will not be a part of it,
said Uriah, casting off the Emperor's cloak and walking back towards his church with his head held high. The rain beat down on him, but he welcomed it as a baptismal. He heard footsteps approaching him, but he heard the Emperor say, "No, leave him." Now interred upon the Golden Throne, the Emperor of Mankind languished, endless torment of a scale unimaginable, coursing through every atom of his being, as 1,000 souls fed to supply the device's ravenous hunger each day, share in his agony. Becoming the very thing he had fought for millennia to abolish, a god emperor of all mankind, the being known by the traitors as the Carrion Lord, has retained his unwilling vigil for 10,000 years of perpetual suffering. The fate of his soul, the topic of much debate within the wider Imperium and Inquisition alike, while the Imperial cult preached that the Emperor has ascended from the material realm to achieve godhood. Such declarations are truly apocryphal. Neither living nor dead, trapped within a purgatory between. The Golden Throne's design, though initially made to harness the webway, now functions as an immense life support system and psychic amplifier. Protected for millennia by his companions, draped with black cloaks to emphasize their shame. As his form withers, within mountains of arcane mechanisms, an entire legion of tech priests toil endlessly to prevent the throne's function from ending. A corpse atop malfunctioning apparatus, whose presence is felt the galaxy over. The eye of the Emperor watches over his domains, much diminished from his former stature, yet regardless enforcing his will when necessary. Whether by manipulating events through visions gifted to his chosen champions, influencing the Emperor's tarot of his will, deploying the mysterious Legion of the Damned to perilous war zones, or inviting pilgrims through the ravages of the warp via the Astronomicon, his every pain-drenched action staunches the extinction of humanity, one drop at a time. A choir of 10,000 psychers, harnessing the Emperor's psychic power to create the great beacon of terror, though a tenth perish with each passing day, the Imperium and thus species survives as a consequence of their sacrifice. The Master of Mankind enduring untold pain in order to vanguard against the dying of the light. His devotion to protect humanity alone staves off his desire to accept the embrace of true death and an ending to his torment. For without his light, no human ship shall ever sail the expanse of stars across vast distances. The technologies developed during the dark age of technology lost forevermore in an era of continual degradation of innovation. The Cicatrix Maledictum's birth, following the fall of Cadia, briefly snuffing out the light of the Astronomicon, plunging the Imperium into disarray. Though his avenging son had returned to the fold, and his light once more shining for all to see, the Imperium's bureaucracy writhes and spasms in the throes of the influence inflicted by resurgent legends of yore. The Mechanicus of Mars, warning that the life support technologies holding the Master of Mankind together falter under the sheer pressure of millennia of endless toil. None possess the knowledge to repair the Golden Throne's fell majesty with the dawn of the 42nd millennium. The Emperor's light, alike to a candle in the midst of a hurricane, it is beyond a shadow of a doubt that in time his presence shall wane. Many speculating that should his mortal form wither and die, perhaps he shall be reborn anew as the Emperor Ascendant. Whether a true god of the Immaterium, which shall herald a new golden age for mankind, or the snuffing out of the last bastion of humanity's dominance throughout the stars, is unknown. Sects of the Emperor's Holy Inquisition diverging on the outcome of such an eventuality, and thus ensuring his continual vigil. Contingencies in place to deny such an outcome, such as possessed by the chapter of the Grey Knights in the form of the Terminus Decree. Doubtless civil war shall erupt should the Emperor be removed from his gilded prison. Some speculating his power to be responsible for the warp storm, known as the Storm of the Emperor's Wrath, during the Age of Apostasy. More extreme factions of immaterial scholars proclaim that should his connection be severed from the warp, chaos shall manifest across the universe unrestrained, plunging the entire galaxy into ruin. Presiding over an empire which he despises to its core, his every attempt to birth an eon of peace has turned to ashes. The technological stagnation, rampant superstition, and regression of human prosperity laced with intolerance, ignorance, and xenophobia. Fearing that humanity shall become extinct without his intervention, the Emperor hangs on by a thread as all around him rots and decays, alike to his own flesh. His unwillingness to allow humanity to thrive without him, a bitter irony which constrains the ideals of yesteryear. The end of humanity draws nearer with each passing day. The slow extinction of a crestfallen species, much slower than that endured by the children of the stars, or their eternal nemesis. A light shone brightest, and thus extinguished all the faster. For while some factions believe the Emperor to be awaiting a new vessel with which to resurrect and be born anew, others pray for a day when his suffering shall end, and his integration into the Immaterium shall hearken his true ascension as a god, unbound by mortal limitations. Yet for all such hopes in a hopeless reality, the grim spectre of this once proud figure persists. Unflinching, undying, and with no sign of surrender. The corpse emperor of a dead civilization, eking out a frail existence which feeds on suffering, destruction, and conflict. For in the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war. And for humanity, the end of such bloodshed will ensure the end of the species entire, as a consequence of its inaction.
Your discomfort is not physical, said Amon. You are in his presence. It is hard for any mortal to bear. Hassan started. In his presence? There was no throne. No throne room. He had been there many times. He knew what it looked like. I do not. This is as far as you can go. Others may get closer, but even for them, it is not easy. Hassan stared ahead. The walls of machinery, of iron grills, of crackling orbs, of crisscrossed girders, of racks of power lines, of evatic drains, of pressure regulators, more and more. Mechanisms he had no name for, mechanisms that if he had seen anywhere else, he would have sworn must have been Xenos in design. All piled up like a landslide of tangled metal within the old cavern at the base of the palace, crammed in,
stuffed tight like wadding in a throat. It roared, it clanked, it hissed, rattling like an old Prometheum engine, apt to burst. Sparks flew, gases flared. Ammon was right. Impossible to go further. And within all that mess, all that labyrinth, he saw strange lights glowing, and heard strange noises resonating, and felt something horrible at its heart. Something wrong, something diseased or damaged or deranged. Something hauled from across some grand barrier where it should have remained and placed here, now, in this place, as an act of triumph. But it was no triumph, not even a mistake, but a terrible, unavoidable abomination. Something both impossible and necessary, darkly magnificent in its ambition, but infinitely foul in execution. Buried in the center of all that remorseless complexity was an orb of blackened iron, split into hemispheres held just a little way apart, each spiked and engraved and lit from within. It was so far away, so very far away, virtually impossible to make out amid the mess, but figures were moving around it, processions of them, red-robed, golden armored. They were working furiously, but he couldn't see what they were doing. He couldn't see what was inside that orb either, only that the light around it was bloody and shifting. It felt like hallucinations blurred and shifted across the flickering shadows, slinking like old dreams over the face of material complexity. Was that a spectral eye he saw, wavering in those stream-choked depths? A single translucent claw on a single thrown armrest, gripped tight, grey, withered? A cadaverous face rippling like a reflection, locked in a howl, a frozen scream, a furious mask of denunciation and agony, and Hassan couldn't look any further. He fell to his knees, panting. He wanted to be sick. He was sick. He watched his own vomit splatter on the metal plates. It would have felt like desecration before. Now it almost felt like the most wholesome thing in that entire place. Ammon waited a while before helping him to withdraw. The two of them went back the way they had come. Hassan was shaking the entire time, his vision blurred, unsure whether it had been real or just one more hallucination. One more sigil slotted into his mind by his old master. The face, though. That face. You had to see it, said Ammon, once they had stopped again, back in one of the antechambers. Hassan nodded weakly. Will he? Kane is in there. My Captain General, too. They labor night and day. We feel it. The absence. What was once vital is now empty. It cools our blood and dulls our minds. Ammon sounded miserable. The price was high. Eventually they came to a halt. Hassan had lost his bearings, but it was clear they were still very close to the heart of that infernal machine. It was all connected. Every chamber, every void was rigged into a giant network, still growing. Mechanisms bolted onto mechanisms.
Mechanism bolted onto mechanisms.
It felt demented. Where would it stop? Why was it growing at all?
Oof. Oof.
This has been a tale of the great Imperium of Man, read by the Remembrancer.
Thank you, Remembrancer.
The road to hell is paved with good intentions, as the mantra goes. The end goals justifying the means for untold millions of evil actions made in efforts to achieve control. Peace, security, and safety, all sacrificed on the altar of the righteous who claim to know best. History continues to lay bare the falsity of promises of a future free from danger at expense of freedom. So beware the man who claims to act on your behalf, for their intentions are often not what they claim. Their demands for power and control, whatever their intention, are means to justify the atrocities committed in their name.
Wow. Wow. Just as planned. All according to Keikaku. Crazy work. We learned more about the Emperor today. Or did we just get more questions? Nyaho. So we learned so much. Next time we're going into the timeline. If you're not in the Discord, there is a channel, a Warhammer channel on the Discord. If you have specific timeline videos, I think I have a few that people already suggested. What's your read, boss? You're the head shrinker. Give us a synopsis. I mean... The broken, withered, and silently screaming thing they saw was the Emperor's body. By the way, it made Amon sick. Yeah, after 10,000 years on that torture chair, Big E is pretty cooked. Yeah, I can only imagine that's what they saw. Sounds like that's what they saw. I need to find the Imperial Armory videos on Verisal Guard regiments. Don't think that needed explaining. I think... I understand more about the Emperor, his choices. I think his intentions definitely were good. I wonder though, like, he relied on some people and some people left because they couldn't see the vision, right? And some people left because they didn't like the means. Despite wanting that. I want to know what he saw for humanity that he was fighting so hard for. What exactly did he see? How was humanity thriving? Like what was worth risking everything for? Right? Because he was still going because he was like, don't worry, everything sucks right now, but the future, the utopia, it's coming. I saw it. We're getting there. Only he knows. Were you surprised at anything you learned about him or his personality today? I was surprised on his friendship with Malkador. He loved him. Only he knows, and maybe Corvus Corax. Where the frick is he? I was surprised to know about the Psychers. So of the Psychers that they are now using to, what do you call it? To keep his body alive. What is it? 10,000 a day? They can't redo what the Psychers did to make him in the first place. If that is how he was made. If that was how he was made, there's no way that they can do that again. No Xenos, no Chaos Gods equals Utopia, maybe. No Tyranids. With the Webway, he could use human wave tactics. No more Marines, no more risk for him as he become the Lord of Humanity, reduced to drones of his will. Maybe. Maybe. The Webway would have helped humans more. But yeah, he didn't share that with Magnus. He didn't share that with Horus. Like, should there have been like an orientation for the Primarchs? Welcome back, Sunny. Welcome back, Sunny boy. Thank you for joining us today. This is our goal. This is our mission. This is what we're going to do. Let us make sure we stay true to our mission. Must you ask a father why he cares to protect his son, or a son why he protects his siblings? I think he had a love for humanity. Which humanity? Where? It was a hypothetical love for a hypothetical humanity. Did he love humanity in its current form? Or did he love the idea of humanity? And that's something we need to sit down and talk about in therapy with him. If you reveal the future, you may very well prevent it from happening. Problem is that chaos is empowered by knowledge. Oh. True. True. What doesn't empower chaos? No way to do that. He was made when the gods were near sleeping. Too much risk to try to do anything like that now. Ah, the gods were sleeping. That's why. Do the Tyranids negatively affect the Chaos Gods? Is there any reason for the Chaos Gods to want to kill the Tyranids other than the Tyranids killing all of the other life forms they're creating? Humanity is evolving psychically. His hope was that eventually all would become like him and develop to become so safely in the webway away from chaos dangers. So he was trying to create a new world where they can hide away. Loads of garden worlds were made under him. Oh, that's beautiful. You can love humanity and have good intentions, but calcify in your beliefs. You can insulate yourself from debate and challenge and think if only the universe, more of you, that humanity would be better off. What starts as a beautiful dream for the species can easily become a vision of yourself. Yeah. The shadow and the warp occupy so much of the warp where there are no room for demons. Ugh, a world with no room for demons. What a life. Why can't you just be the humanity 10,000 years from now? Jeez. Tyranids don't believe, but they're killing the thing that do, and that's their power source. Got it. So the Chaos Gods also don't want the Tyranids. Heard. If the Chaos Gods knew the Tyranids were coming, maybe they would have left the Emperor and his children alone to eradicate them. But now, everything's in the air. Everything's up in the air. I don't think it's wrong for the Emperor to lead humanity down a specific path, but was that the path that he should have led them down on? Was it? In a galaxy with no living beings, there is no worship of the gods and no emotions. So they would starve to death. Rate Big E out of 10. How interesting of a character is he to you? Ooh, out of 10? He's a good old 8. There's still some things I don't know about him, but the complexity of his humanity and his foresight and his humanity being his downfall and his love but also not love for his sons and his love for humanity but also what he's doing to humanity and his hate for gods and religions but how it turned him into a god. Good stuff, good stuff. And I did cry at Malkador. Sure did. If you make me cry, easy. Easy A. So complex and so human. So human. That's the folly of man, truly. But that's what makes it so real. That it's so human. If the Nids win, the galaxy would be empty, though, and the Chaos Gods could return to their benevolent selves before the war in heaven. Oh, like a reset. Spam art of the Emperor's shiny pecs and magnificent shiny black hair to sSakana to make her say the Emperor is a 10 of 10. The Emperor was a woman? 12 out of 10. Easy. Anyways. That was the Emperor, guys. That was the Emperor. We learned him. We loved him. There's still so much to learn about him. We gotta learn the timeline. We gotta learn about his sons. So much to do. So little brain. But we're gonna keep on keeping on. What if Big E was one of us? Just a 10-foot stranger who lives perpetually on a bus. We never know. Big reset, that's why the Nids pass every galaxy every few million years. Oh! Okay. Afraid you weren't liking him or finding him boring. 8 is a pretty good number. I'm glad you liked him in his nuance. Nah, I didn't think he was boring at all. I get it. There were some questions where I was like, why do you do that? Why do you do that? But after all of this, I'm like, okay, I know why he did that. Wish he could have done something else. He felt like there wasn't anything else he could do. You know? So yeah. Next week on Warhammer Wednesday, it probably will not be this early. I had to do it early because I had a meeting. But yeah. Probably like 4 p.m. maybe 3 p.m. Central. We'll start. We'll go into some timelines. Again, there is a Warhammer channel on the Discord if you want to recommend specific. We're not gonna get into painting yet. I still don't have any orcs. Okay, I'm waiting to get some orcs. Hope you read Lord of the Night and Desert Raiders and give your opinion. I do want to read. I think that would be really interesting. Some people don't know I have a degree in literature, so it would be fun to read some books and do a book club. Sad word Discord. Exclamation mark Discord. A book club. So yeah. Thank you guys for hanging out. Also, if you didn't know, I am a student. So I'm gonna try and use the revenue from stream and stuff to buy some of the orcs. Also, if you would want to, but you totally don't need to, but if you want to help, the orcs can be found on the throne, exclamation mark throne. That is a wish list to fund it. So yeah. Otherwise, I'll wait for the payout and we'll buy some orcs. Don't worry. I appreciate you being here and watching and viewing and sitting through the ads and or subscribing and giving biddies. Everything that goes into the stream stays into the stream, okay? I'm not running off with your money and going away to a tropical island, although I wish I could. We're not doing that. That money's for orcs. Fund the orcs! Okay. Bye, YouTube. We're gonna send off Twitch to somebody. See you later, skaters.